At the opening of the story, a monster with countless blood-red eyes was roaring in the gloomy sky. In 2045, Earth was facing horrific, brutal creatures. Many soldiers who took part in the battle had died. They couldn't withstand those razor-sharp claws. The giant-bodied monster stared down at the fallen on the battlefield. At that moment, a young man went pale with fear at its attack. Is this the end? He collapsed to his knees before those sharp claws, as if surrendering to fate. But unexpectedly, a youth charged in and used his sword to slice through one of the monster's tentacles. It was so surprised that it stared wide-eyed at the hole in its body. Soon after, the monster, enraged, aimed its sharp claws straight at the young man. He furrowed his brow and unleashed razor-sharp slashes, cutting those tentacles into segments. The monster still wouldn't give up. It swung a huge tentacle toward where the youth stood. He squinted as he watched the massive object. Right above his head, the young man immediately pulled out his gun and fired straight at that tentacle. This man was the commander of Earth's last defense force, Han Sang. He said without turning, "Get up, we still have to move." The person behind, who had just been saved, then regained his composure. He quickly raised his gun and then fired continuously at the monster, while Han Sang shouldered a long gun and advanced. And now, after endless battles, only a few survivors remained. Han Sang grimly pushed the gun back to gain momentum. He knelt on one knee and aimed straight ahead. Our target is right in front of us. Suddenly a golden, magical barrier appeared in front of the monster. Hansen was astonished by this strange phenomenon, wondering what is that. Before he could answer, he found himself being sucked inside, without knowing when. Seconds later, his teammates, seeing Hansen vanish, panicked and called for the commander. Meanwhile, in a strange space filled with chains, a mysterious voice echoed. In response to the come, Han sang. He suddenly felt countless cords wrap around his neck, making every breath more difficult. Han Sang, bound and suspended in midair, looked fearfully at the crowd before him. They were agitated. Unbelievable, it actually worked. So this is the otherworldly hero spoken of in legends. He glanced at the metal mass in his hands, wondering what these glowing chains were, and where he was. An old bald man stepped forward and said, "Otherworldly hero, welcome to the Empire." He could only listen silently to these strange words. He stroked his beard, speaking earnestly. "I know this is abrupt, but please defeat the Demon King and save our world." Han Sang frowned in confusion. "Demon King? What are you talking about? Where am I? Who are you? This is not the time for nonsense. I have to get back to Korea." The old man urgently thrust a palm, filled with spiritual power, forward to intimidate him. "Be silent." A second later, bolts of lightning quickly struck him. As an incantation and a restraining oath were activated. He manipulated magic in the air, intoning a few words: "Don't resist anymore. If you behave while I'm still merciful, this spell won't harm you." Han Sang couldn't breathe, tears streaming as he inwardly resented. Since when had this happened? Then the old man brushed his hands and made a plea. "Please destroy the Demon King." He threw the sword onto the magic circle on the ground, stressing each word. "Save our empire. If you agree, we can send you back to your world. Will you accept this offer?" "Though," he asked once he finished speaking. Everyone here looked at Han Sang with bullet-like stares. He pressed his lips together, brows knitted, deeply awkward about the situation. Han Sang had no choice but to agree. And so, Han Sang was summoned to a completely unfamiliar world, to fight as the Empire's otherworldly hero. He worked without rest, joining countless expeditions. Han's on time and again swung his sword, slaying hordes of monsters, and fulfilling the Empire's endless demands. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. He sacrificed his youth to kill the Demon King Valor. Finally, Han's son freedom. Night after night, he dreamed of what he'd do when he returned home. But then, the old man demanded again. "Han, son, I'll tell you your next mission." You spoke resentfully. "What? What promise did you make?" He sipped tea and continued. Saving the empire isn't finished by merely killing the Demon King. There are still those who oppose the empire's unification. They must be eliminated. We cannot allow the opposition to rise. You only need to deal with this threat. Kill him, Dable of the Teutonia Knightly Kingdom, and then you'll be free. The old man glanced over, the corner of his mouth lifting. Do us one more favor. Hansung, though he wanted to resist, the chains at his neck restrained him. What can a dog on a leash do? You miserable bastards. Thus smoke and fire erupted everywhere once more. When will this ever end? In the knightly kingdom of Teutonia, Hansung and Bedel were then dueling with swords. After a while, he succeeded in driving his sword into him. Bedel cried out in pain. You didn't expect you'd be this stupid. He pulled the sword out, his voice flat. I had no other choice. Sorry, Bedel. He questioned the otherworldly hero. Hansung, didn't he? Bedel, sweat pouring, replied, Don't apologize to me, Hansung. He slid down the wall. The next words left him stunned. Because soon you will be discarded. Hansung sighed, raised his hand, and murmured, It's over. At last I can go home. Little did he know Brandenburg was behind him. Suddenly, 2 golden cords looped around Hansung's neck, startling him. The old man stepped forward and thrust his sword into Hansung's chest before he could react. A dangerous tone ringing out, Well done, otherworldly hero. Hansung hunched over, coughing up bright blood, calling the Count Brandenburg's name. He sneered. Hansung, over the years you've fought wonderfully. You've obeyed like the Empire's loyal hunting dog. I, the General and Holy Knight, acknowledge that. You glared, struggling to scold, You vile hypocrite. So it was all a lie. You never intended to send me home. Brandenburg pulled his sword out of Hansung. Blood spurted out, and he demanded, Why do it? A hunting dog only knows how to bite. As soon as his body collapsed to the ground, the old man gloated, Farewell, Hansung. With a dazed look, he cursed inwardly. I knew they wouldn't let me go easily. But damn it, I will never forget this humiliation. Suddenly a flash of light burst from Han. Son harboring hatred. He vowed to make this damned empire pay with total annihilation. That night one life closed its eyes, and another life was born. At that moment a newborn opened his eyes, and cheers rang out. Congratulations, madam. It's a boy. She, sweating profusely, reached out to hold the tiny hand and whispered, My dear child, I am your mother. Hansan, now in the boy's body named Dale, looked at the couple before him in surprise. Who are they? I've never seen these faces before. He closed his eyes as he was stroked and soon realized. He remembered. Hansen thought to himself, that man was the continent's greatest necromancer and dark mage, Duke Saxon. And this must be the Empire's forbidden magic center. Necropolis is where the Black Tower stands. The reincarnation stone only works once successfully activated. It was what he had hidden away, a forbidden item. He prepared to break free from his hunting dog chains. The body he reincarnated into was all by fate. Unexpectedly, he was reborn as the eldest son of a Saxon duke, one of the Empire's most prestigious nobles. Dale smiled with pleasure. So this time I was born with a silver spoon, huh? He thought of the bald old man in Brandenburg. Once I grow and master necromancy, I'll sweep away all those damned Empire scumbags. Saxon grew a little uneasy. The wet nurse. The boy hasn't cried at all. She stroked her chin, puzzled. His breathing was clear, yet the boy made no sound. The lady worried. Please check the baby's condition carefully. Dale pressed his lips, feigning annoyance. I'm not a child to cry so easily. Am I? The wet nurse cradled him and checked him over. His breathing was steady, so there was no need to worry. Sax furrowed his brow and asked, Is a baby who doesn't cry considered a bad omen? The nurse reassured him. Do not fret, sir. But if you truly want the young master to cry. The wet nurse gave his bottom a sharp smack and smiled brightly. You can pat his bottom until he cries. The sudden smack stunned Dale, leaving him both hurt and embarrassed. The two adults laughed at his ashen face. The kid is stubborn. He must have inherited your strong will. The couple looked at Dale happily. The woman reached out and called, Come let me. He pale, muttered inwardly, "You fools, your son is perfectly fine." Elena picked him up, face down, and raised his little arms high. Dale squeezed his eyes shut, cursing silently as he braced for another blow. But she gently rubbed his small bottom, surprising him. Dale took a deep breath, taking in everything around him. The moment the warmth of a gentle hand touched his skin, an image of Hansung flashed in an instant, and he suddenly remembered something. He lifted his shirt, wiped his own wound, and murmured, "The last time I felt that warmth was when, in his previous life, Hansen could only wander alone, taking care of himself. Now you're Dale, the soft, slightly trembling hand of the young noble lady. Your new mother radiated a love you had been denied for years." Hansung, who had never shed a tear once he became aware, could no longer hold them back and burst into sobs, just as a newborn ought to. Saxon, sitting on the bed, spoke softly. "It's been 8 years since Dale was born, hasn't it? Time truly flies." Elena nodded in agreement. "That's right. Is Dale still in his room? Since he was 4, he's never strayed from his books." He took her hand affectionately. "He must take after his mother. It seems he's begun to take an interest in magic." Elena tucked her hair behind her ear and called, "Alan, you still remember, don't you? The vow between us." He thought of Dale sitting and reading, then continued, "You mean to promise not to pass soul summoning to Dale, right?" She smiled. "You still remember." Alan replied firmly, "Of course, I do, my love. Don't worry. Dale's birthday is tomorrow. I'm preparing a gift for him." Suddenly a knock at the door startled him. Who would be visiting at this hour? Just then the maid Hot High burst in and shouted, "Your Grace in the study. Young Master Dale." Her next words left the couple utterly stunned. Voices echoed everywhere. Dale hurriedly pushed the door open and asked, "Are you all right?" He was kneeling at the time manor, radiating around him. Dale turned his head and called out, "Mother." "Father." Elena clutched his clothes in fear, stammering, "Dale." She hurried over to check him all over. "Are you hurt anywhere? What on earth happened?" Dale winced but replied politely, "I'm fine, Mother." Meanwhile, he raised his arm with a stern face to probe the aura. "I can feel mana spreading through the air." Dale is only 8 years old. On the other side, Elena was still beside herself with worry. Dale, however, wriggled and said, "Please let me go." Suddenly he clasped his hands behind his back and strode toward Dale, murderous intent radiating. "Were you the one who released the mana in your body?" The boy was scared out of his wits. "I knew Father would notice. I'm done for. I never expected my mana to erupt this early." Dale trembled and stammered. "That's..." Panic rose inside him. If he didn't answer quickly, Father might start doubting his identity. Contrary to what he feared, Alan gave a slight smile. He patted the boy's head and praised him. "As expected of my son. It's a pity I cannot teach you soul manipulation." Those words made Dale very curious. "You can't teach me soul control. Then what about my vengeance?" Elena, standing beside them, cut in. "The servants will clean this up. Go back to your room now." He let out a helpless sigh and obeyed. "Yes, Mother." After that, Dale hugged his book to his chest and left. At the same time, Alan stepped to her side and called Elena. "I've just thought of a gift for Dale." A while later, at Dale's birthday party, people in the hall buzzed with chatter. "The Count is here too." "Well, it is the young master's birthday. Of course I had to attend. It seems all the nobles of the Black Duke's domain have gathered. So when will the young master make his appearance?" "Indeed, it's been a long time since we've had such a grand banquet." The host of the party, Dale, sat pensively in the second-floor hall, listening to the whispers. It seems the party is starting later than planned. It certainly is lively. He felt utterly exhausted. Who would have thought so many people would gather just to celebrate his birthday? Perhaps because he was used to being treated coldly. As a hero, their behavior toward him as a young master still feels awkward. But the table smashing incident the other day still nags at me. I never expected that. Merely recalling my time as a hero would make the mana inside me erupt so strongly, no matter how I look at it. With this ability, It's a pity to miss out on soul manipulation. I heard a rumor that he already thought of a gift. Maybe I should ask Father to teach me soul manipulation instead of giving a present. No, that's probably still difficult. At that moment, Elena approached in an elegant dress, waved, and said, "You've been waiting long. Haven't you, Dale?" He cheerfully called to his mother. She smiled like a flower and continued, "Happy 8th birthday, my child, Dale." He looked at the cloaked figure beside Elena and asked, curiously, "Who is that standing behind you?" Elena raised a hand to remind him. "Ah, go and greet them, dear." The mysterious person slowly pulled down their hood. This person was the elder of the Azure Magic Tower, a master of water magic, the venerable Sophia. "Elena, he will be your tutor from now on," which surprised Dale. Sophia also greeted him. "It's a pleasure to assist you." She winked and whispered to him, "Happy birthday, my son Dale." Dale was puzzled. The elder of the Azure Tower is invited to be his teacher. So, what does that mean? Mother wants me to learn water magic, the kind focused on defense and disruption. Of course, she doesn't want me learning dark magic. Sophia spread her hands and said, "Dale, may I speak with you privately for a moment?" He shyly replied, "Yes, Master Sophia." Soon they stood in a place covered in white snow. Sophia's voice, "I don't know if you've heard, but I was assigned to teach you water magic. Aren't you disappointed? Surely there's another type of magic you'd rather learn, right?" Dale asked in surprise, "How did you know?" She raised a finger and said, "Wanting to learn soul manipulation. Your father's dark magic would make that understandable. However, the marital conditions of the Black Duke are something the whole empire knows about. When Lady Elena was proposed to by the Black Duke, she was terrified by his brutal reputation. To reassure her, he swore he would not pass his curse on to his children. I still remember the wedding day, when the elders of the Black Tower discarded their familiar black robes and wore pure white. To prove that vow, because this marriage was bound by such a sacred pact. You cannot study dark magic for now, but I will find a way to persuade Lady Elena. Are you willing to study under my guidance?" Dale replied awkwardly, "But aren't you wary of dark magic or soul manipulation? You're an alpha race that respects nature's laws, acts that go against natural order, like resurrecting the dead." Sophia laughed and exclaimed, "Interesting. What about clerics who save the dying? Are they following the will of nature?" He fell silent and listened to her perspective. In her view, soul manipulation and resurrection are essentially the same. Dale suddenly realized Sophia was very different from the typical stubborn elves. Perhaps she would be a teacher beyond his expectations. She suggested, "Then let's begin the lesson. I heard you formed a small fragment of a mana array a few days ago. The first goal is to expand that fragment, to complete a level 1 mana circle." Dale was utterly surprised and looked up. "Oh, a level 1 circle. Coincidentally, most of the magic books I've read recently require reaching that level before practicing. Then I'll make my first circle now." Sophia began instructing, placed her hand over her heart and concentrated. He followed precisely. "Yes, master." Then Dale gradually opened his eyes. This place was a world different from Earth. This place was saturated with mana. However, except for ancient beings like dragons, directly manipulating raw mana was impossible. Therefore, I needed a mana circle in my heart, a filter-like structure to refine raw mana before use. It gathered the scattered fragments of mana around the heart, assembled them into a complete circle, and then set that circle spinning evenly around the heart. Dale felt the circle encircling him and whispered, "So a mana circle is the conduit that imprints the mana flow into the heart. I just need to follow Master Sophia's instructions." Outside, she was still teaching, starting with the first step, training the mana flow to revolve around the heart in a steady, orderly way. Normally, this process takes at least a month, so don't rush. Dale opened his eyes, looked down at his palm, and muttered, "Master." And suddenly a blue circle appeared, surprising even him. "I did it." Sophia was stunned, equally astonished, and exclaimed, "What?" She looked at those small hands manipulating mana in bewilderment, a child just beginning training. can form a circle in mere minutes. If the child truly possesses innate talent, then Sifia covered her mouth with her hand and asked, with curiosity, "Can you try releasing mana along that circle?" Dale immediately shut his eyes, funneled energy into the circle, and said, "I will try. Master, you generate a source of magical thought. For ordinary children, just expelling mana outward through the circle would be exhausting enough. Merely that wouldn't allow me to avenge the Empire, nor keep up with Duke Saxon. In my previous life, I used mana sigils, engraved on the body, to cast offensive spells for combat. But this time is different. This body inherited the power of the Black Tower's master, so it can absorb mana naturally. Perhaps I can learn not only water magic, but other magics as well." A stream of energy began to run through my body. Dale told himself, "Okay, focus. Guide the mana that's entered the body to flow out through your fingertips and create a shard. Aim straight at the Empire's throat." Once the mana had accumulated enough, he opened his eyes and pointed 2 fingers forward. The image of Hansung from his past life also appeared, and in an instant Dale formed a dazzling, razor-sharp block of ice. Sifia was stunned, swallowed, and thought silently. Generally when mana is compressed then expelled, its shape tends to break. But he crystallized the mana into a relatively complete ice sphere. Focusing on form may have reduced its destructive power a bit. She stood at a distance, watching his every movement carefully, and after channeling his power, Dale drove that ice mass straight into the trunk of a nearby ancient tree. It immediately produced a blinding explosion, splitting the tree cleanly in 2. Sophia turned stunned, watching the ancient tree topple onto the snow. A tense expression began to form on her face. Sophia glanced at Dale, inwardly puzzled. Sharp and hard enough to pierce a trunk. This was not the kind of precision an 8-year-old could normally display. Who exactly is that child? At that moment, he raised his hand, waved gently, and smiled. Sifia knelt, touched the wood lightly, and marveled. My goodness, I thought. The boy had only just accessed basic mana control. Unexpectedly, he could release magical energy and integrate the ice element into it. Although it was only a basic spell, he executed a perfect absorption of the surrounding cold, manifesting the effect flawlessly. Seeing her dazed like that, Dale timidly asked, "Miss, did I do something wrong?" Sifia heard him and turned around, smiling faintly. She looked at his guilty face and thought that, for an innocent child to unconsciously produce that, the sophistication of the technique was truly extraordinary. Safia imagined the mana swirling in the air, converging and accelerating, until it formed a sharp shard of ice. His face before that heart circle suddenly came to mind. These 3 formulas are the golden ratio of wartime magic. Sophia stared at Dale, who had his 2 index fingers pressed together, incredulous. Could the boy unconsciously replicate and cast such a complete, critical damage spell? He called out again. Miss and Sefia instinctively raised a hand, stammering, "Oh, it's nothing." Now I understand why Lord Moore felt such regret. Not long after she sat drinking tea in a large room. Alan's voice, "You say you can't teach Dale. Why not? A child who completes a full circle in just minutes is all the more deserving of cultivation." Sphinx interjected. Young Master Dale to successfully form the circle and immediately cast a complete critical damage spell. Hearing this, he froze in place. She pictured someone struck by those blows and explained, "It's hard to believe. That was produced by an 8-year-old. A spell containing the golden ratio in its wartime formula." The image of young Dale defeating someone flashed in her mind, and she stated firmly, "Your Grace, young Master Dale has a talent for killing." Alan rubbed his chin and murmured, "As the elder of the Azure Tower, a proponent of nonviolence, are you using that as an excuse not to teach the boy?" Sophia took a sip of hot tea and replied, "Not at all." She thought of Dale, delighting in the magic at his hands. And precisely because he is like that, I want to personally instruct and guide the child on the right path. He frowned, puzzled, and said, then there's even less reason to refuse. Sifia unexpectedly let slip a line that struck Alan to the core, paling his face. The noir magic of Lord Noir. Young Master Dale seems to already possess the magic I wish to teach. I've also heard about the relationship between the Black Duke and his lady. I respect the promise between you and Lady Elena, but that doesn't mean you have the right to decide your child's future, especially for someone with extraordinary talent, like the young master, Your Grace. At the same time, Dale was eavesdropping outside the door, but he felt downcast. He couldn't clearly hear what they were saying. Dale slid down the wall, guessing and speculating. But it must be about me, right? He recalled Sephia's astonished face and felt surprised that his first spell had such power. Even Sephia was extremely amazed. From now on, I must be more careful to control my strength. Suddenly a shadow appeared right in front of him, making Dale look up. His mood changed in an instant, and he shouted happily, "Hey!" Dale looked at the man grinning before him and cheered. "Uncle Helmet." The man just scratched his head and asked, "What are you doing here?" He stood up and retorted, "Where did you come from?" Then, Helmet reached out, hugged Dale, and laughed. Of course, duty to protect the Duke's domain. He hoisted him up high and excitedly recounted, "I just cleared out a pack of terrifying monsters." Dale excitedly, "So you just conquered a dungeon?" Dale's expression suddenly grew pensive, like an adult lost in distant thought. In this world, dungeons appearing or monsters running rampant are serious problems for any domain, since the time of the Demon King, because the damage caused by those monsters is considerable. The knights of this territory must conquer unexplored prisons within the Demon King's lands. Their main mission is to eliminate monsters spilling out from dungeons, especially in the Duchy of Saxon, where the situation is far worse than in other domains. He recalled images of himself as Hanzong in his previous life, blaming himself and accepting that he was the cause of that ordeal. In his past life, after the Otherworld hero defeated the Demon King, Duke Saxon was ordered to turn the Demon King's lands into imperial territory by suppressing all the monsters there. Back in the present, Dale looked away wearily and muttered that, in technical terms, it was called clearing up the remnants. As soon as he was set down, he warned Uncle Helmet, "Be careful." The uncle laughed loudly and teased the young master. "The worries about me." Suddenly a voice rang out, "You look well." When the two turned to see who had appeared, Dale softly called, "Father." Helmet stammered a loud greeting. "Greetings to the Duke of Saxon." He crossed his arms and praised with his eyes, "This campaign has been hard on you." At the same time, Elena and several servants approached. She cheerfully exclaimed, "Oh, is everyone gathered here?" The three of them glanced over together. He wondered curiously, "Mother, what brings you here?" Elena raised a hand to her mouth and softly called to her child Dale. She quickly bent down, stroked his cheek, and praised him. "I heard you successfully formed the circle, right?" "Oh, my dear, you're so good." Saxon added congratulations. Dale and Elena turned to him. She winked and said, "If there's anything you wish for, tell me." That remark made him think. If I said I wanted to learn necromancy, would that be too scheming? What do children this age usually want? After pondering for a while, Dale casually let out a line that made the two of them gasp. "I want a little sister." Saxon awkwardly said softly, "All right, I'll try." He chuckled. "Yes, father." The nearby soldiers couldn't help laughing at the scene. One soldier turned and gently reminded Helmet, "Please don't laugh, Captain." Time passed, and before long the full moon rose to the zenith, illuminating the area. Dale sprawled on the bed, inwardly complaining that having to act innocent at his age was truly a hardship. It was probably because he had just used magic and felt a bit tired. Just as he sank into sleep, the eyes of his past life self suddenly stared wide open, filled with terror. It was the scene of Brandenburg, stabbing Handsome from behind. That returned. The old man's voice echoed, "Nice to see you again. Hansung, how long has it been?" He gasped in pain and could not speak. You. Brandenburg drove the knife deeper, hoisting Handsome's body up. People are so deceitful, aren't they? How can you change so quickly? Do you feel happy, living with kind parents in that warm house, with your back warm and your belly full? You must think revenge no longer matters, right? He exuded a murderous aura, emphasizing each word. The Empire will find you. Han's son, they will hunt you down until they end you, until every trace of you is gone from this world. Terrified Dale suddenly woke up, struggling to breathe. At the same time, a quantity of mana appeared, right in front of his chest. It began to gather in Dale's chest, making him extremely uncomfortable, his heart feeling as if it would burst. Is this a mana burst phenomenon? Dale clutched his chest with one hand, forced himself outside, and cursed inwardly. Damn those Imperial bastards. Will they never let this go? He thought. A bit of cold air outside would make him feel better. He hugged himself tighter, panting, and wondered why does it only get worse. Suddenly Safia appeared right behind Dale and said, "You look like you're in pain," which made him jump. He turned to look at the familiar face with suspicion. Miss Safia. She was then generating a source of mana, and suddenly realized it was a mana burst. Truly a gifted child, but I still can't shake this sense of unease. She then reached out and lightly touched Dale's chest. Her mana source directly dispersed the energy that had been gathering in him. Sophia, eyes half closed, worried silently that if one day this child's magic turned malicious, it might be beyond saving. Dale, still innocent, stared at the small circle of spiritual power in his hand, thinking the mana burst had dissipated. A moment later, Sophia called out Dale. He looked up in confusion and answered yes. She glanced to the side and explained, "The nature of magic is a mirror reflecting the soul. Therefore, even with the same spell, each mage manifests it with a different hue. Your magic carries the power to steal life, a tremendously dangerous force. That is why I feel fortunate to be the one to instruct you." Dale took the book from Scythia and curiously asked, "Ma'am, what is this?" He eyed the spiritual power, surrounding it with suspicion. "This is a grimoire on necromancy." She smiled brightly and, "I think our meeting may have been destined." Dale, naive, heard Sephia's blessing. "Happy birthday, Dale." Then suddenly he rushed forward and hugged her tightly, startling Sephia. She laughed teasingly. "You're still so immature and adorably silly, young master." A few days later, on the plains outside the North Gate, she stood behind and watched as Dale surprised asked, "Is it a rabbit?" She looked at the white rabbit and calmly replied, "Yes. Remember when you used to go hunting with your father?" He quickly summoned magic to his hand and replied, "Yes, ma'am." The white rabbit turned at the right moment to look at the two of them, bewildered about what was about to happen. At this point, Dale had formed spiritual power in his hand and swung his arm back to gain momentum. He took careful aim and threw the ice shard, hurtling toward the white rabbit. Safia watched his small hands intently, thinking that even the same type of magic is extremely varied, depending on the caster. "Do you know why?" Dale honestly replied, "I still don't quite understand." Safia explained, "Because magic, after all, is a mirror of the inner self. It uses mana to realize what is in the heart. Thus, in magic, one cannot hide the landscapes of their soul." After listening, Dale fell silent. A bead of sweat rolled down his cheek. She closed her eyes and launched into a discourse. Even names like firewall or other incantations are merely ways to steady the mind. The magics of the towers are not very different. The Red Magic Tower Worships Order, maintained by Strength. In that tower, someone was creating a sphere of medicinal fire, as if to preserve the place. The Blue Tower, meanwhile, values the order of harmony. The ideology each tower pursues is reflected in the form of their magic, depending on each tower's tenets. The magic system is established. Besides the Red Tower and the Blue Tower, there are also the Black Tower, the White Tower, and the Green Tower. Having said that, Cepheus smiled gently, but Dale still wore a puzzled expression, which left her helpless. for a child like him. It was certainly too early to understand such things. Dale immediately turned his attention to the unfortunate white rabbit, surrounding it with his spiritual energy, and thinking to himself that the most basic necromantic art is turning corpses into slaves. It is magic that uses mana to let the caster control a corpse. He became very serious and focused on his task. At that moment, a series of threads shot from his hands, beaming down toward the rabbit, to the base of the spine and the knees, tying the strands of magical thread firmly to those points. A second later, the rabbit opened its blood-red eyes wide. Seeing his success, Sephia praised, "Well done, Dale. Can you proceed to the next step?" He guided it while responding, "Yes, ma'am." Then, Dale poured all his strength into creating ice armor atop the magical surface. A bluish energy slowly radiated from his eyes. Dale slammed his palm onto the ground. The area trembled as sharp ice formations rose up, forming a circle around the patch of earth where he stood. Mana swelled and quickly solidified into a sturdy block of ice before him. Within minutes, the white rabbit was fitted with a layer of ice armor, on its back bristling with sharp spikes. Sophia judged the ice armor's form to be decent. She then produced 3 small ice plates and said, "Let's test its defensive capability." A blinding beam of light shot straight into the ground, cracking it into fragments. Even Dale broke into a sweat at the display of power. It streaked rapidly toward where the rabbit stood, knocking it backward as it was caught off guard. The rabbit glanced back and saw the spikes on its armor, shattered by that strike. Dale cheered happily, clenching his fist when he saw it still alive. "All right, you blocked her arrow." Sophia turned to acknowledge him. "Very good, Dale. You did well. It seems you want to say something. What's the matter?" He boldly said, "Yes, ma'am. I want. Please teach me how to fully wield water magic." Hearing this, the corner of her mouth twitched upward, but her refusal rang out. No, which left him open-mouthed and looking dejected. As he asked why, Sophia raised a finger, winked, and sighed. "What you did today is only an extremely basic form of water magic. Like all magic, the water discipline demands deeper comprehension and finer nuance. The more you study it, for a novice mage to learn, even a single school is already arduous, and using 2 schools simultaneously is called being a dual specialty mage. At your age, that's almost impossible. For my view, you possess too great an ambition." Those words surprised Dale. Dale recalled chanting those 2 words in his head while casting. "Ambition. Have I shown so much and it's still not enough?" He gloomily murmured. "You yourself said you'd help me find the path ahead." Caught off guard, Sophia hesitated speechlessly, then took an excuse to change the subject. "That's it for today's lesson." That night in the study, Dale walked forward holding a stack of books. He set them down on the floor, silently resolved that even if he was alone, he could do it. He would prove it. Dale began to fumble through the pages, reading each one, and at the same time his manner erupted violently. Not long after, voices echoed and Dale groggily opened his eyes. Sophia, worried, asked, "Are you all right? It seems you didn't sleep last night." Dale lied without blinking. "I was just preparing a few things, so I stayed up a bit late." She reminded him upon hearing that. "Don't overdo it, Dale." He, with dark circles under his eyes, reached forward and replied, "Yes, ma'am." Immediately a magic circle appeared, followed by mysterious mana. He once again controlled the white rabbit, encased in heavy ice armor, and the energy surrounding it. Sophia turned to observe Dale manipulating his energy, and noted you have fully mastered it. Suddenly the ice masses on the rabbit began to tremble. Sharp ice blocks burst from the armor together and flew straight forward. Looking at the swirling dust, Sophia wondered. Ice fusion burst. The white rabbit then sat still, lifted its head, and exhaled a surge of mana. That made her even more astonished. Is it not over? Suddenly it transformed into a giant rabbit, with an orb of energy right in its belly. The white rabbit immediately hunched, and swallowed that energy into itself. A second later, a terrifying explosion erupted, and the ice spikes lunged forward. Sifia panicked and formed a shield around herself, eyes wide as she watched the recent chaos. Countless sharp ice shards struck her shield directly, leaving Sifia inside increasingly alarmed. Thinking this, shortly after Dale slowly approached her, but Sifia didn't know what to say. He raised his palm, generated his energy, and spoke. Corpse burst and ice fusion burst. I have fused water and shadow magic. Dale summoned 2 streams of spiritual power in both hands and asked quietly, "Is this enough to become a dual discipline mage?" Almost all movement ceased after Dale's magical test. Sifia broke out in a cold sweat and stared at the ruins of the formation. This is a type of attack I've never seen before. She stood frozen, analyzing how the ice armor from the ice fusion burst had caused the corpse burst to produce a much wider, explosive force. Moreover, the ice fragments and sharp bone shards, embedded like blades. Sifia stepped forward to inspect the scattered ice shards. On the ground, she looked at Dale with deep unease. This was magic forged solely for slaughter, like that of someone who'd lived their life on the battlefield. What finally must this child's disposition be like? Dale turned back with an expression full of terror. He uttered. At the sight of Helmet, he joyfully called out, "Uncle Helmet." The man raised his hand in greeting young master. Miss Sifia. Seeing his uniform, Dale curiously asked, "Did you just clear another dungeon?" "Uncle." Helmet excitedly boasted of his feat. "This time we eradicated a small group of magical beasts." The Black Armor Cavalry unit had quite a tough time, as well. The Black Knights bearing lances shrouded in aura are the peerless cavalry of the frigid Duchy of Saxon. Figures moved in and out of view, and their commander, Knight Helmet, is one of the 7 great sword sorcerers of the continent. Dale clasped his hands in joy and reminded, "You still remember. You promised to teach me swordsmanship, right?" In his mind, learning the sword from a man like him would be an incomparable honor. Helmet burst into loud laughter. "Of course I do." He scratched his head with delight and bade him farewell. "Then see you soon, Uncle Helmet." Not lingering further in conversation, Helmet took his leave and turned to go. "All right, it's cold, young master. Get inside quickly." Sifia looked toward the castle and told him, "We should return as well." Dale smiled brightly and nodded in agreement. "Yes, master." That night, the discussion began. "What do you mean by that, Miss Sifia?" She replied dazedly, "I'm only stating the truth. Young Master Dale has completely mastered both arts, necromancy and water magic." Saxon rested his chin in worry. "Miss Sifia, clearly we only requested that you teach the child." Anticipating the implication, Sifia told him, "Yes, only to instruct him in water magic. But as his mentor, I only wish to teach what the child passionately wants to learn. As I said, what Dale desires is not just water magic." The atmosphere fell silent for a moment before Elena spoke up. "Then if Dale wishes it, can we continue to ask you to guide him in water magic?" Sifia respectfully bowed her head to accept the proposal. "Of course, I will assist him further in the time to come." Elena replied politely, "Yes, thank you." After the discussion concluded, she quickly took her leave. But before fully departing, Sifia remained to offer an apology. "I sincerely apologize for forcing you to break your pact with Lord Moyer." After she left, Elena stretched in. "My boy is truly extraordinary. Not yet 9 and already a dual discipline mage. Sometimes he sends shivers down my spine. But that is exactly my son." Saxon's face darkened. He glanced at her and quietly called Elena. He bowed his head gloomily and voiced his desire to seek her counsel. "I want to teach Dale necromancy. As Lord, I want the boy to be able to shoulder the responsibility of succession and to be an apprentice of a talented mage. And as a father, I only wish to pass on everything I have to my son." Saxon clutched his head in anguish over the mistake in his decision this time. "I am truly sorry, Elena." Elena was deeply worried about society's heavy prejudice. People still view necromancy with contempt, whispering that it is the magic of death. I only opposed him for that reason. So please train our son to become a death soul mage, who can ignore what others say. The deeper intention in her words left him silent. Do you understand? He then embraced Elena tenderly. I understand, my lady. I will spare nothing to make our son the strongest. And so, the first day of the special necromancy training began. Already Dale was being reprimanded. This is disappointing, Dale. Do you keep summoning without understanding what you are controlling? Dale pouted and silently retorted. But that's all my master taught me. In the underground workshop beneath Lord Moore's castle, the moment Dale demonstrated what he'd learned from his master, the Lord only clicked his tongue and immediately brought him here. Saxon pointed sharply and commanded sternly, once you learn under my banner, never perform those sloppy spells again. Begin by memorizing the entire skeletal and muscular structure of every creature. Do you understand? Dale shuddered and, unwilling but unable to argue, said, Yes, father. The books my father gave me. Only professional healers could read them, even my previous life. And after a few days, I had memorized every single word. After the assessment was complete, he closed the book. It seems the basics are finished. Dale, you can start practical training. Now, we will begin the real training. Dale eagerly followed. Yes, father. After a while, the smile quickly vanished from his face. Dale couldn't believe his eyes. And is this the corpse of a goblin? After a moment of observation, Saxon smiled faintly and reminded him, You look quite confused. A weak practitioner of dark magic can only make the corpse of a blade saint move at a zombie level. By contrast, someone truly skilled can turn an ordinary soldier into an undead knight. Before you stands a commonplace undead soldier. How do you intend to control it? The goblin lay there silently, regardless of what unfolded. Dale opened the magic circle in his mind in confusion. His face began to squint. It seemed somewhat difficult. Dale struggled to bind the thin threads together. Unlike the small, few-boned rabbit, a two-legged goblin has too many joints. So linking them with mana is really troublesome. When everything was linked, the goblin moved and lunged forward under his control. Damn, it's like controlling a puppet tangled in ropes. I must have been wrong to use post-mortem rigidity to boost defense. The joints and muscles are stiff and can't move anymore. In a case like this, what is the right approach? Seeing him panic, Saxon stepped in to stop him. Dale, stimulating the corpse to stiffen is not a bad idea, but it also restricts the body's movement, far beyond what is necessary. Then he demonstrated once for him. Watch this. Saxon merely lifted his mana slightly, and it spread to envelop the goblin before them. Dale was stunned to witness such a magnificent sight. The threads of Saxon's mana were penetrating its body. He caused the skeletal frame to expand and said, The ribs on the goblin's side swelled, the part used to protect the internal organs. He channeled his magic deeper as he spoke. But for the dead, a skeletal frame protruding from the arm no longer needs to protect internal organs. He asserted, Understand the target structure and transform it into a form suited to your purpose. Dale gaped in horror at this grotesque magic. He casually dismantled that goblin and concluded, That is the foundation of dark magic. Dale hung his head as if he had something to say. Father, please teach me the philosophy of dark magic. Saxon gave a faint, mysterious smile that hit satisfaction. He gently bowed his head, manner still flowing from his hands. The truth. Saxon knelt and placed a hand on Dale's shoulder. Truth always hides within death. The more he spoke, the more his eyes narrowed with conviction. Therefore, we must understand. To grasp that truth, one must understand the weight of life. Suddenly, memories of a past life surged back, just as the battlefield was about to end. An apparently innocent civilian begged him, Please spare me. I beg you, Sir Hero. He coldly raised his sword. Please spare my life. And then he showed no mercy and ended him. Saxon's call rang out. Dale saw his face was unsettled. He worried a little. Are you all right? Despite his father's question, Dale stood there in a daze. You look pale. The memory made him shiver. So after a moment, Dale finally spoke. He said to reassure his father, "I'm fine, father, I'm fine." And then time passed quickly, as Dale's magical training gradually improved, day by day. The news that Duke Saxon had taught dark magic to Dale spread throughout the entire empire. The Duke's breaking of a vow from many years ago caused a huge shock because of the very reason that compelled him to break that oath. Both the nobility and the commoners in the empire focused all their attention on him. One ordinary day, Dale was diligently practicing swordsmanship. A few weeks later, in the training yard of the Duke's manor, Dale and Helmet were straining as they sparred eagerly. Every strike Dale launched was very precise. That amused Helmet. Both of them tried to execute magnificent moves, their blades tracing one after another. After a while, the most tense blow in the fight appeared. Dale braced himself, while Helmet also raised his sword high, refusing to yield. The old man swung with a lucky strike, and Dale managed to dodge in time. Seizing the opportunity, he stepped forward and knocked the sword from Helmet's hand. Helmet turned his head to look at it, his face betraying genuine surprise. The sword was flung with such force that it stuck deep into the ground. When it landed, Helmet wouldn't admit defeat. He quickly surrendered. The young master is very skilled. Of course, Dale didn't believe this. How could a swordsman like him let his sword fall? He wiped his sweat. "Guessing you intentionally dropped it, didn't you?" Helmet picked up the sword and denied it. Of course not, since the young master had applied his swordsmanship in real combat. An ordinary person would probably have died from the first slash. The young master's swordsmanship was too excellent. It's a pity that the young master is a mage, because mages always have knightly guards beside them. In reality, the young master wouldn't need to train so hard. Was there a reason he was doing this? There's no need to push yourself to the point of injury. Dale looked at his bandaged arm and said firmly, "Of course there is. If the Duke's son only relied on his guards or protectors, he wouldn't seem majestic at all, right?" That was only a secondary thought. Actually, he was thinking besides, who would pass up the chance to learn swordsmanship directly from one of the continent's 7 great swordsmen? Hearing those confident words, Helmet smiled with delight. He smoothed his hair, burst into laughter, and praised his reply. "If I had a son like you, I would have no regrets." Dale was overjoyed to hear that. Finally, he was praised by him. Just then the figure of someone in a dress approached. It was Elena. She called out. The two looked happy, and Dale cried out with joy, "Mother, what brings you here?" Elena smiled gently and said, "I wanted to see how diligent my son has been." After a moment of silence, she got to the point also. "I have some news to tell you." He asked curiously what news. Elena teasingly asked him back, "Do you remember the birthday present you once requested?" Dale rubbed his chin, thinking of the large gift box she had brought. "I vaguely remember the birthday gift." "What was it?" Suddenly he remembered his previous request. He wanted a little sister, and through that he understood what Elena meant. Seeing this, she rubbed her belly expectantly. "Then you must take very good care of your little sister." Dale folded his hands, his eyes shining with excitement. "Of course, Mother." Time passed quickly. Before long, it had been 10 months. Dale kept poking the little girl's cheek, which made her delighted. "Does the child make you this enamored?" He didn't hesitate to say, "Yes, that's right. I can't believe this is my sister." Dale stared at the little girl without looking away. She was unbearably cute. Seeing this, Elena suggested, "Do you want to try holding her?" Although Dale liked it very much, he was a little shy. "Huh, me?" Seeing this, Elena suggested, "Do you want to try holding her?" Although Dale liked it very much, he was a little shy. "Huh, me?" She slowly placed the little girl into Dale's arms. "Come on, don't be shy. Holding a baby isn't hard." Saxon admitted that after holding her, it really wasn't as difficult as imagined. "Well, she looks exactly like you, doesn't she?" Seeing the girl smiling brightly, Elena was a little excited. "It's strange she cries whenever I hold her, but she doesn't cry when you hold her. The child seems very happy." Dale smiled gently as he looked at the tiny life in his arms. Suddenly Saxon stepped forward and asked, "How do you feel now?" Dale honestly voiced his feeling. "She feels as light as a feather, but also very heavy, Father." Alan smiled gently, and a sense of peace filled the room. "That is the weight of a life." He placed his hand on Dale's shoulder and reminded him, "Never forget that." "Dale, now, it's probably time for you to go to class, right? Let's go, Dale. Master Sifia is probably waiting for you." Sephiroth smiled and gave a brief introduction, so he understood. Today's lesson was practical combat training. Dale hesitated timidly. "Am I really going to fight for real?" Sephiroth encouraged him. "Don't hesitate. Give it your all and attack." He began to summon the familiar magic circle. Master Sifia also formed a small magical orb, ready to fight to see how much heat improved. The opening attack was sharp, ice shards hurtling toward her. Sifia casually swatted them away, and everything scattered. The kid's first strike was too slow. She brushed aside the ice pieces and taunted, "How dare you?" She held up a shard of ice with mockery. "Are you holding back against your master?" At the sight, Dale stepped back a few paces, cold sweat running down his cheeks. Sifia threw the ice shard toward him and ordered, "Immediately raise a barrier." Dale's face contorted in fear at that terrifying, killing intent. The attack raced forward, and in an instant it unleashed tremendous power. Dale looked at his knee and hands freezing in terror. If he hadn't blocked in time, he would have been seriously hurt. Sifia was thrilled to see this. In such a short moment, he had formed an ice armor. Dale quickly dispelled his magic, and the piece of ice armor fell away. She nodded and instructed him. "Good, Dale, keep attacking." He braced himself on the ground and recited the name of a mixed element, combo technique of ice formation. As the words issued forth, the technique manifested in. Dale began constructing an ice fortress. A tall, sturdy ice citadel rose up directly before Sifia. She murmured in puzzlement. To cast an ice fortress right in the middle of a battle. By reinforcing the magical structure, the boy had increased the ice's density to an astonishing level. Sifia touched it lightly with curiosity. But why use a protective formation at this moment? Could it be that the boy needed to recover after his previous move? While lost in thought, something caught her attention. A sound coming from the other side of the wall. A violent ice flash of light erupted with the spell's detonation. At the ice wall's edge, Sifia stood stunned for a moment, to piece together what had happened. She froze, a perplexed drop of sweat running down her cheek, ice shrapnel scattering. Magic from the blast engulfed Sifia's entire body. After the explosion ended, the ice wall collapsed. It worked. Dale had densified the ice wall further and caused it to detonate. The ice particles strengthened and then compressed, turned into an ice bomb. Dale thrilled inwardly, convinced it would be unavoidable, Master. But the scene before him made him cry out in fear. "Master!" Her body cracked and nearly froze. Solid shards of ice punching holes in places. "Master Sifia." But then from behind her someone suddenly appeared. "Were you calling me?" Dale breathed a sigh of relief. "You startled me. So it was only an illusion." Sifia snapped her fingers to melt the ice layer on that effigy, and assessed it. A frightening skill, Dale. She hadn't expected that a mere first-level mage could wound an elder of the Mage Tower. Dale bowed his head in sorrowful apology. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Master." Sophia smiled gently to reassure him. "I know. Actually, I'm glad you wounded me. You believe I'm strong enough for you to give your all, don't you? As your master. That fills me with more pride than any praise." Hearing that eased him somewhat really. She affirmed it. "Of course you're an outstanding disciple. But how did you come up with that spell formula?" Dale smiled modestly. "All thanks to your instruction, Master." She smiled kindly at him with affection. A while later, in Alan's private chamber, Lady Sifia. "What about the wound on your cheek?" She lightly touched it and praised Dale on this. "I was careless while teaching the young master. His formula was especially sharp." He sighed wearily in exasperation. "I am indebted to you again, Sifia." She shook her head, refusing to thanks it's nothing. Being able to teach such a talented student is my joy as well. Alan spoke seriously and clearly to Sephia. May I ask one more favor of you? Sephia was always ready for his requests. Yes, tell me. Alan recalled the reported monsters. We received word that a band of orcs crossed the mountains into our territory. A small cavalry force cannot handle them. The atmosphere around Sephia darkened at the news. However, I intend to have Dale participate in this battle. Sophia immediately stepped up to protect him. Young Master Du is not ready yet. Alan quickly countered with reason. Standing on the front lines, we'll never grant him the chance to be ready. After all, defending the territory is the duty of House Saxon. As the Duke's heir, the boy must understand that responsibility. Dale cannot be the exception. Sephia had no choice but to obey. What do you need me to do? Before answering that, let me say one thing. I will entrust to Dale one of my artifacts. I want you to guide the boy until he can control its power. Rings appeared representing the mystery, the artifact, an item imbued with power and will. Alan's imposing image spoke volumes, usable only when charged with mana or life force. The stronger an artifact, the more dangerous and harder it is to control. In some cases, it can even be lethal. In front of House Saxon's artifact vault, Alan explained to Dale, the Saxon family has long mastered this kind of power. Dale is the Duke's heir. You must also prepare for the upcoming battle. Hearing that, he widened his eyes in surprise of battle. Wonderful. Alan nodded and clarified Dale's. Yes, you will go with the punitive force to eliminate the orcs. Arriving before a large door, he instructed him. But before that, you must learn to control the dark power of our family. The moment he stepped in, Dale's face was filled with astonishment. Alan gave Dale an overview. Look, these are the artifacts of the Demon King that our house manages. They've been here since our ancestors took the Demon King's domain. Don't compare them to ordinary artifacts. He looked around with barely contained excitement. I can feel a powerful flow of mana from them. He nodded satisfied when he heard that. That's right. The things here are extremely powerful and dangerous. Do not touch them until you learn how to control them. But when he turned around, it seemed he had disappeared without them noticing. Alan searched and admonished, unaware that he was right behind him. Where did the boy go? A short while earlier, Dale had strolled around with the intention of finding an artifact suited to him. Suddenly a voice came from a nearby shield. Hey, do you have a grudge burning to be avenged? I can sense that hatred. The other artifacts vied to beckon Dale to go slay with them. Come here, choose me. Coward, pick me. Let's explore new depths together. He placed his hand on his chest. Certain these dark artifacts were resonating with every lingering grudge in him. But it still wasn't enough. I need something even stronger. Suddenly Dale realized the artifact that had been clinging to him all this time. When did this cloak get here? With his seasoned experience, he recognized it at a glance. Wait, this is the Shadow Garb. In the Age of Heroes, Duke Berta of the Demon King's Legion used this supreme artifact. Its ability makes darkness tangible, turning its wearer into a fearsome opponent. Without further thought, Dale put it on. Let's try it. At the sight, the two others panicked. Dale, quickly afterward, was engulfed by darkness. In the dim space, a strange voice echoed. Feed me hungry. So hungry. Dale remained calm, while drops at his feet rose up. So it has begun. This is not an ordinary shadow. Those who once wore it could summon storms of darkness, commanding shadows like living creatures. To truly control it, the owner must make the specter completely submissive. The specter rose up from the darkness. It lunged to attack Dale. This won't be easy, will it? His eyes widened, intensely focused, cold sweat rolling down his cheekbones. From the outside, all one could see was a pitch-black sphere. Sophia worried. I've been probing for a while. Is this cause for alarm? He rubbed his aching head. If this continues, he could lose his mind and be consumed by the specter. Hearing this, she panicked and asked how to resolve it. What? Then, quickly raise your hand and work. Force it out. Before the two could do anything, a flash of light burst from it, blinding them. The sphere of darkness gradually dissipated, and Dale reappeared. Dale. He stood upright and answered him proudly, "Yes, father." Sifia hurried over to ask Dale, "Are you all right?" He quickly replied, as if nothing had happened, "I'm fine." Hearing that, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. "You scared me." Dale scratched his head sheepishly. "Just a little sting." On this side, Alan was a bit curious. Why was there not a scratch on him at all? How could a child withstand such a powerful artifact? Dale, slightly worried, turned and called him father. "I have a question." Instinctively, he replied, "Speak." Granted permission by him, he voiced his request with an excited face. "May I try the others as well?" The two of them seemed to freeze, their faces slack in stunned silence. At that innocent question, he grimaced a little embarrassed and allowed him. "Be my guest." His heart leapt with joy. "Thank you so much, father." And so began the days of Dale exploring the Saxon family's artifact vault, from dawn until late at night. In the following days, at the ducal family training grounds, Helmut exclaimed in astonishment, "Young master, isn't that the shadow garb you're wearing?" Dale smiled broadly and quickly admitted yes. Helmut, worried, asked about his condition. "That legendary item is notorious for being hard to control. Are you really okay?" Dale scratched his face awkwardly. Oh, I'm fine. Apart from a bit of ticklishness. Nothing wrong." Helmut unconsciously rubbed his head. In puzzlement, how interesting. Dale made up some excuse. "Maybe it's been lonely too long." At that, the specter surfaced, and seeing him, latched on immediately. It surely just wanted companionship. Helmut forced a smile and praised him. Unaware, Dale had just stomped the specter with his boot. "Why call that horrific thing lonely?" "You are too kind." He pressed it down hard, feigning innocence. "Thanks, Uncle Helmut. I have a favor to ask." Hearing that, the uncle quickly inquired, "What do you need?" Dale voiced the wish he desperately wanted to fulfill. "I want to train in real combat." Helmut immediately took a defensive stance, a killing intent thick in the air. "Very well, I will not let you down." Seeing that, Dale was a bit apprehensive. Facing one of the 7 great swordsmen of the continent was truly beyond him. Helmut smirked to reassure him. "Young master, don't be nervous. I'll only use basic sword techniques. I won't use aura." But that remark inadvertently irritated Dale. "Take it easy. A knight must always fight with everything he has." That was the knight's belief. His real purpose was not the sparring itself, but to practice using the shadow garb. Magic from the cloak began to spread and envelop the arena. The power of weapons forged from specters will determine the true value of an artifact. Thus, this battle would be a necessary test. Magic was unleashed, and Helmut raised his sword high, prepared to defend. With a single slash, he quickly swept away the cluster of specter attacks. Witnessing this, Dale admired Helmut all the more, breaking an attack with sheer strength. "Wonderful." Helmut beamed with excitement and laughed, praising him. "Well done." Before launching the next strike, Helmut warned, "I'm coming in." With his experience, Dale quickly evaded the blow, and he leaped back, leaving only the magic behind. Spikes shot up from beneath Helmut's feet, but he still noticed them in time. He twirled his sword, preparing a blow to shatter everything. A surprise attack. Interesting. Realizing the strike was aimed at him, Dale hurriedly shaped his magic into a shield. When the slash landed, Dale's magical barriers only cracked heavily but held. He braced himself to withstand the heavy force of the elder's blow. Even though he was thrown backward, Dale stubbornly kept his footing, leaving marks on the ground. Helmut chuckled softly, a little unsettled inside. "You blocked it. I put enough force to cleave an ordinary sword in two. So this is the difference between a regular weapon and a high-grade artifact." Not stopping there, Helmut pressed on with 10 more strikes. That day, the witnessing knights whispered among themselves. None of them could exchange even 2 blows with Captain Helmut. They felt an invisible wall between themselves and Dale. Days slipped by, and the time to depart arrived. Elena was extremely worried for Dale. "I'll speak to your father again, no matter how I think about it. I don't understand why you'd let him go to such a dangerous place. Dale reassured her by mentioning the extremely strong people present. Don't worry, Mother, Father, and Uncle Helmet are there. Yet with a mother's instinct, Elena remained uneasy. What if something happens? What if you get hurt? What? Dale reached out and explained his stance. Mother, you must grow strong, so that one day you can shoulder the duties of a duke. By then I need the strength to protect you, Father and my sister. So I really need this experience. Please allow me to grow stronger to protect you. Moved by Dale's plea, she softened and decided to agree. All right. She called out as Dale mounted his horse. Take care. He sat firmly in the saddle. I promise I'll return soon. That early morning at the temporary base at dawn, Helmet inspected and reported. Sir, the army is ready to depart. Alan nodded. Good. Then he closed his eyes and turned away. Dale, issue the order for the vanguard on my behalf. Dale blurted out yes. Alan looked back at the impressive ranks and explained, our proud cavalry. The Black Cavalry will one day follow your command. They are your knights. He hesitated a bit, but accepted proudly. Dale's knights, not Han's songs. This will be my first battle as commander. Yes, this time will be different. With that thought, Dale stepped forward and declared it's time to march. Advance, proud blades of House Saxon. After his words, all the soldiers shouted in unison. Yes, young Master Dale. He crisply. All troops, take your positions. The thunder of hooves signaled that a new beginning had commenced. In this campaign, 250 cavalry and an elite commander unit were stationed at White Mountain. The Eastern garrison forces also joined. They quickly reached a large waterfall. The target was about 1,000 orcs. The orcs had crossed the mountain range and moved upstream along the Saxon River to escape the cold and forage for food. They would soon move downstream. We will raid by crossing the Saxon River. There's only one way for 250 soldiers to cross this deep river quickly. From afar, Cephia walked up quietly. Please step aside. She approached coldly with the intent. I will form a bridge. Dale called out joyfully. Master Cephia, she's come to assist in person, although his master valued moderation. In the blink of an eye, Cephia had formed a solid, powerful bridge of ice. When she finished, Cephia raised her hand to invite them. Everyone can cross now. May you return victorious. Alan did not forget to express his gratitude. I am grateful for your support. Dale stepped forward to bid her farewell. Master, I'm leaving now. Sophia watched his small figure as he slowly rode away. A strange, indescribable longing rose in her heart. How odd. How could a disciple make his master worry so much? A while later, at the ORC's temporary encampment, the Eastern Garrison's concealed commando unit fired an ambush. Volley of arrows. Arrows streaked forward amid blazing flames. Tens of thousands of arrows were loosed, turning the sky into fire. The volleys slaughtered many orcs. Helmet gave the order. Now battalions 1, 2, and 3. All soldiers assumed combat readiness immediately. He signaled the spear formation to charge forward. Helmet, observing from above, turned and asked young Master Dale. Dale thought to himself, each hoof strikes the ground twice per second, meaning a speed of 40 kilometers per hour, and with the rider's weight and armor, the impact force will be enormous. With 3 2-4-meter lances locking position, forming a spear phalanx reinforced by aura, even the orcs won't withstand this strike. He spoke to assert dominance. Alan responded in agreement. This was the pride of the Duke's cavalry. Helmet smiled and said, don't relax yet, young Master Dale. This is only the beginning. The orcs had already taken solid defensive positions. The battle between righteousness and evil was unfolding intensely. Helmet reported. The ambush successful, but insufficient to annihilate them. A voice. We will withdraw, regroup, and alternate the attacks. A signal cannon fired, and the soldiers shouted retreat. Signal. Entire unit fall back. The war horses immediately ran back to the camp. To withdraw. The orcs seemed puzzled, unsure what the righteous forces would do next. They growled in anger at the sudden retreat. The young knight also quickly received the order and turned his horse to withdraw. But the orc did not relent. It hurled spears at him, A spear flew with unpredictable force, knocking him off his horse. Dale, observing from above, was taken aback. He suddenly realized and began to think seriously. A voice rang out. "Unfortunately, Alan said a rider has fallen." Dale responded, already beyond rescue, just like that. The proud Saxon's sword lay powerless before the enemy. He turned and, why to stand and watch? Alan seemed troubled by something, and Helmet made no move either. The orc had lunged very close to him. Dale thought spurring his horse now would be too late. From his distance, he would need to pierce the orc's thick hide in a single strike. Orc skin was far tougher than most monsters. I need to adjust the formula of the freezing band, add a high-precision sniping formula, and lock the ammunition path to ensure stability and improve finish. Dale immediately unleashed the ice strike. Magic technique, Lapio Magnum. The orc lunged ferociously at the young knight. Dale's technique shot forth instantly from above, piercing through its body. Helmet said, "The distance is quite far, but the accuracy remains high." He asked in surprise, "Young master, are you planning to lead the charge?" "Alan, let him go, Helmet." Helmet exclaimed in astonishment. "The Duke." He briefly thought. At this age, he's already created his own magic technique with that level of firepower. Alan and Helmet stood, watching his every move, thinking secretly that Dale's inner world must be nearly complete. He suddenly realized. He thought to himself that the other orcs had regrouped. Dale stood there observing carefully, pondering. Now there were two problems. One was the body, stiffened from the shock of falling off the horse. And two, the initial magic form was too long and not optimized for combat. That's why one must learn basic identities like a plus B, AB equals a caret. To be caret 2, I should simplify it. Dale calculated in his mind, for example, Ice 98 Magnum, but it didn't seem reasonable. He thought it's still a bit long, and Dale said do it like this. After calculating, he suddenly focused intensely and murmured, "Ammo freeze." The wounded young knight couldn't resist, and looked around pleadingly. A sharp shard of ice from afar shot through the orc's head so quickly, it had no time to react. It was instantly killed. The young knight cried, "Young Master Dale, why would you come all the way here? For someone like me?" Dale did not answer, but gently dismounted and moved closer to him. He stepped nearer and said in a soothing, "Don't worry. House Saxon never abandons a loyal sword." But the other orcs still wouldn't relent. They charged in, forcing him to cry out for help. "Young master," it roared loudly, face contorted in fury over its fallen comrade. Yet Dale, still calm, unleashed the phantom blade technique. Immediately, streams of energy surrounded the ORC. He smiled with satisfaction and murmured, "Absorb them." Those energies were instantly drained of their power. The currents kept absorbing relentlessly, making the orc's body unable to remain intact. Slowly the energies consumed everything, until only the head remained. They absorb until only a skeleton lay on the ground. Dale laughed triumphantly and said, "Still alive, huh?" He then used the ice ammo technique, instantly killing the orc. Dale wiped its blood away and said, "That's done." The young knight said in surprise, "Young Master Dale, my leg won't move." The remark embarrassed Dale, but he cheerfully lifted him up, exclaiming success. Dale gently said, "Leave the rest to me and Uncle Helmet." Helmet immediately accepted the offer and ordered the cavalry squadron to charge forward. All the soldiers surged forward shouting, "For House Saxon, for young Master Dale." A while later at the Saxon encampment, a report rang out. "Dale, the ORC extermination mission succeeded." Alan suddenly spoke sternly. "I called you here because I have something to ask. Why did you charge into the enemy ranks alone? What on earth possessed you to act so recklessly?" Dale looked anxious under the rebuke, trembling slightly, wondering why he was being scolded. Alan pressed on. "Explain why you jumped into the enemy alone." Dale replied, "Yes, father. You said the Saxon Knights would be led by me in the future. I only acted to be worthy of that honor." Alan seemed somewhat satisfied, but he still said, "Your reason is too weak," which made him wonder why his famed Knight devoted father would respond like that. Dale asked, may I ask, why you stood by and watched a knight be slain? Alan, the Northern Demon King, territory governed by House Saxon, constantly endures waves of monsters. Knights standing on the front line raised their swords, not to be rescued. He still struggled to understand and said, but I hope you would save a loyal knight. He replied as he did, do you want those who must think and act on the battlefield to hope someone will come to save them? How many knights with that mindset do you think can survive? Knights in our domain must continually sharpen their blades to face ever-present danger. Only when they have reached their limit do we personally intervene. That is the noble duty our house must bear. Dale suddenly realized and thought to himself that this was an undeniable truth. He had understood it in his previous life, yet had somehow forgotten. Alan reached out and patted his shoulder. He said, but your acting on your own will is commendable. Do not lose that spirit. Dale replied, I understand, father. A light from outside shone straight onto him, like a halo. Alan drew back the curtain and said, let's return to the castle. The tale of the young ducal heir, personally charging into the orcs to save a single knight, became the Empire's favorite topic of gossip. They told how the young master single-handedly cut down thousands of orcs, though part was true and part embellished. The story spread throughout the Empire like wildfire, even though the man himself felt embarrassed. The incident injected new energy into the duchy. A few days later at the training ground, everyone excitedly cried, young Master Dale is here. Honor to meet you. Welcome, young Master Dale, making Dale blush with embarrassment. He said, I told you there was no need for this. Helmet seeing this happily teased, puff out your chest. Young Master. For young Master Dale's future, we must become stronger. Understood. Everyone shouted in unison. Understood, sir. Dale found it odd and thought why so enthusiastic. Suddenly a maid called from behind. Young Master Dale. A guest from the Orhart family has arrived. Dale smiled and replied, ah, thank you, Eve. Helmet also asked, shall we go? Young Master. He suddenly realized he was about to meet a special guest. The Martial Lord Orhart, head of the House Bardell Holy Sword, was once a great noble of the fallen Teutonia. But when the Empire went to war, it seems something terrible happened. The kingdom, the Holy Sword, and the Orhart family were all burned to ashes. Dale suddenly thought Helmet's expression was different. He must be remembering the Holy Sword, the one who made him a knight. He thought to himself, it must be hard for him to breathe. Alan immediately said, you arrived at a good time. Just finished training right. Dale replied, yes, sir. The steward entered to announce young Master Dale. The guests have arrived. Suddenly a voice rang out, treat them with great respect. Charlotte and her mother entered, and Dale briefly wondered. There's no retinue coming with them. I am Vanessa Orhart. My respects to Duke Saxon. A voice replied, welcome. Vanessa turned to her daughter and said, this is my daughter, Charlotte Orhart. But Charlotte seemed displeased and muttered mother. That attitude made Dale curious. He wondered himself what kind of attitude that was. She reacted strongly. Why should we bow to them? Vanessa, seeing this, admonished Charlotte. What are you saying? But Alan remained calm and said, the two had traveled a long way to come. Dale, could you escort Miss Charlotte around the castle for a while? He obediently replied, yes, sir. Dale quickly offered softly, saying, Miss Charlotte, would you accompany me? But Charlotte still insisted, grinding her teeth and saying, don't. She waved her hand forcefully and shouted, don't touch me. Dale didn't understand what was happening. Alan was also bewildered and confused by Charlotte's attitude. But Charlotte, with her strong personality, kept that proud expression and seeming very angry said, the Empire's nobles are shameless. Vanessa, seeing this, said Charlotte, what are you doing? You apologized to the young master this instant. Her scolding annoyed Charlotte, and she turned away and left. Dale still called gently, wait. Miss Charlotte, Vanessa said sternly, please forgive my daughter's rudeness. She's not usually like this, but recent events have left her unstable. Elena, hearing this, was very sympathetic and asked what happened. She recounted that not long ago, Count Brandenburg became the new ruler, assigned to their territory. He was called the Empire's Holy Knight, so they had likely heard of him. His fame matched his infamy. Being called the Pig King was for a reason. There were rumors that to secure a talented heir, he decided to sow his seed in every skilled swordsman. Even my underage daughter barely escaped with her life. However, that horrific memory cannot be erased. Vanessa pleaded desperately for help, saying, I want to protect her, but as a fallen noble, my power is limited. I beg you both to take my daughter into House Saxon as a maid so he can never lay a hand on her again. Dale seized another chance to say, Miss Charlotte, do you know where you are going? But Charlotte coldly replied, I don't care. Thinking to herself, why is it the training ground? Charlotte then gently asked, is your hand all right? He cheerfully replied, I'm fine. Don't worry. She suddenly took hold of the sword's hilt and said, good. Charlotte thought too. I wonder if she's holding a grudge about earlier. Even if a bit sharp-tongued, she's still a child. She suddenly drew her sword from its sheath and said, sternly, very well, duel me then. Charlotte frowned as she ordered. Dale of House Saxon drew his sword. The action left Dale bewildered, exclaiming what? He thought, why is she acting so freely? Charlotte coldly raised her sword toward Dale and said, duel. Dale calmly said there should be a reason. She replied, I've heard many rumors. A superhuman who single-handedly wiped out 1,000 orcs to save a fallen knight. After hearing the story, he felt embarrassed and didn't know what to say. Charlotte, I'll defeat you, the one famed as peerless in the Empire, and prove to the world that I'm stronger than you. Then I'll prove I can protect my family from that man. Dale curiously asked that man. She answered, Count Brandenburg, the holy swordsman. Hearing that, he gritted his teeth and thought to himself that he couldn't forget him, the imperial dog who stabbed him in the back. He didn't expect to hear that name here. Sharing a goal, they could be good allies. But first the girl needed a dose of reality. He coldly turned his back and walked away, leaving Charlotte puzzled. He looked back with disdain. She was just an unreasonable brat. Having said that, Dale took up his sword and said, give it your all. She, hearing this, became very angry and said, I already intended to. With that, Charlotte immediately launched a powerful attack. It remained a gentle assault to Dale. He still stood there with solid defense. Seeing this, she retracted her sword and unleashed another strike. Charlotte's face was resolute, her gaze icy. Dale seemed quite surprised by her strength. Charlotte suddenly realized and thought to herself, counter instantly, block with the wrist, and she showed signs of channeling aura from her body into the oversized sword. Just as mages for mana threw rings in their hearts, knights accumulate aura to push their bodies beyond human limits. Dale briefly thought she truly was a genuine knight. She gave a wicked smile and brought her hand back to prepare another attack. The attack came like lightning, but Dale still dodged. As usual, the duel between the two grew intensely fierce. With determined eyes, she thought that at this rate, she would gain the upper hand. When I was born, my father was no longer alive, but every night, my mother told Charlotte stories about him. Mother said she must protect the family in place of her father, as the proud daughter of the Holy Sword. Even when the kingdom fell and the family dwindled, Charlotte's sword never ceased. Charlotte tensed. Sweat ran down her face, and she suddenly wondered why. She was furious, thinking to herself that she could not touch him. Charlotte's attacks continued to be launched, but she briefly sensed that something was off. Charlotte once more threw herself forward. With all her might, she thrust her sword straight at Dale, but still couldn't get past his defense. Charlotte wondered inwardly, Dale gently swung his sword, producing a light counterattack. It sent her sword flying out of her hand. Charlotte was bewildered, thinking she was the daughter of the Holy Sword. The sword stuck into the ground. She said in disappointment, why can't I win? Dale replied calmly, because you are not the Holy Sword. Pride in being that person's daughter isn't wrong, but the current You cannot protect your family from that man. The holy swordsman's blade is 10 times stronger than mine. Hearing that, Charlotte regained her composure and blurted out, "So what should I do? What must I do?" Dale said gently, "I, Dale of House Saxon, swear on my family name to protect House or Heart until the day you are strong enough to defeat him. With your own hands, my family and House Saxon will be your shield." Charlotte, puzzled, asked again, "Why are you explaining this so calmly?" "Because my sword is worthy. Swear to become my blade and that of House Saxon." She hurriedly wiped her tears and said sternly, "How could I possibly refuse? I, Charlotte Orhard, swear on the honor of a knight, even if it seems like a child's promise. That determination is enough to count as a vow." That night in the Duke's study, at Miss Orhard's request, Charlotte would become a servant of House Saxon. Saxon asked in surprise, "I didn't expect the girl to accept." So, without hesitation, "What happened between you and her?" Dale answered honestly, "We promised each other, father. I swore to protect House Orhard under the name of House Saxon." He then asked, "You're not using our family name out of pity, are you?" The boy replied firmly, "No, father." Saxon continued, "So what do you want to gain from this?" Dale expressed that the last bloodline of the Holy Sword, her talent was extraordinary. "We vow to each other what I want is for the new Holy Sword to raise its blade for our family." Saxon, seemingly pleased with his thought, said, "Very well." Dale thought to himself that the last blood of the Holy Sword, residing under our roof, would be enough to deal Brandenburg a painful blow. At that moment, in the old capital of Teutonia, Malberg, a voice thundered out, "Damn it!" The wine glass was slammed down, shattering into pieces on the floor. Brandenburg shouted angrily, "Those arrogant fools dared to act first." A soldier replied, "I'm sorry." He slammed his hand on the table, and "Idiots. You couldn't even capture one girl." The soldier said, "We sent assassins, but they were killed before reaching House Saxon. We suspect Charlotte Orhard herself eliminated them." Brandenburg closed his eyes tightly, his face ferocious. He walked out, thinking to himself that they were useless. Brandenburg rested his hand lightly on the table, briefly recalling how fine things used to be. He remembered the image of stabbing Dale in the back. Brandenburg stroked his sword and said, "Do you agree? Holy Sword Durandal, my beloved bride, wait for me a little longer." He schemed cunningly, vowing to create your perfect heir at any cost. Brandenburg ordered contact with the Thieves' Guild and sent men to the Duke's domain. He smiled schemingly, "Pay whatever it takes. Bring that girl Charlotte here." While acclimating to the ducal castle, Charlotte diligently underwent rigorous training to become a servant and sparred daily with Dale. In a training yard under the blazing sun, Helmut called out, "Ready." Dale held his sword and smiled confidently, of course, while Charlotte beside him looked at him with a very determined expression. Helmut smiled gently, his eyes closing calmly. Then, Dale and Charlotte crossed blades as Helmut said, "Begin." Dale's swordsmanship was extremely skilled. Charlotte's expression remained fiercely focused on him. He continuously struck at her with a flurry of sword blows. With the situation intense, Charlotte still tried to parry the blows. Helmut was watching the match between Charlotte and Dale intently. He thought too, is this what children's training matches look like? She's not even a knight yet. The duel was tense, sharp, and intent and speed. Damn. Suddenly Dale's gaze faltered as he pulled his cloak before Charlotte. He was drawing the cloak across his face. Charlotte's eyes sharpened, preparing to strike. As Charlotte's blade met his helmet, stopped them. "Very good," he calmly praised. "You fought well, Miss Charlotte." Her brow knitted. "Don't flatter me. Where did I go wrong, Sir Helmet?" He asked slowly. "Do you know the single, most fundamental principle when handling a rapier?" She hesitated. "It's to thrust right." Helmet shook his head. "No. The core is your feet, your footwork." "Young master." Dale avoided the thrust and closed the distance. At that moment, you should have stepped back to look for an opening. With a rapier, bending your arm kills its advantage. An unsteady blade ruins all accuracy. To be honest, you need to tear down and rebuild your basic foundations. Charlotte panicked. What? Helmet continued. I've noticed for a while. The stance and footwork are sloppy. She grimaced. That's because I've never had a proper teacher. Helmet answered slowly. Now that I'm here, we'll fix that awkward, thrusting posture of yours. Her face flushed with embarrassment. Awkward. He laughed heartily and patted her head. I'm just teasing, Miss, you're too cute. Dale watched thoughtfully, wondering how quickly she would improve. Under Sir Helmet's instruction, the continent's greatest swordmaster, and resolved to work harder, so Charlotte wouldn't catch up. The process of creating a mana ring is quite similar. You must feel mana flowing in your heart. Wait for a steady current to form. Then inscribed the mana pattern into a complete magical ring. The problem is this can take decades. Sathya asked, You've completed the second ring. Dale nodded yes, ma'am. In this world, the rotation speed of a mana ring is measured in RPM. A one-ring mage typically has 300 revolutions per minute. That is 300 revolutions per minute. Current ring 1 at 2,000 revolutions per minute. Ring 2 at 400 revolutions per minute. To open a new ring, you need at least 300 revolutions per minute. So I'm already eligible to open the third ring. Now that I have 2 rings, let's test them. Enhance using basic rounds. Increasing the bonds between the ice rounds. Molecules to enlarge. Size and hardness. And simulating a large barrel to amplify rotation, count, and firing speed. On Dale's fingertip was the spell for armor piercing. Rounds targeting. His power was erupting fiercely. The explosive energy blazed, spinning powerfully at the center. The wall before him had a hole blasted through it. Damn, were armor-piercing rounds always this easy to fire? Sathya applauded in praise. You learned too quickly. Dale replied formally and respectfully. All thanks to my master. From rescuing a knight from the orcs, to Charlotte's development, a child learning to wield power rightly. Dale was lost in thought about her. Her talent was frightening, but in truth, it inspired more trust than fear. Sathya hugged him and soothed. Truly a disciple to be proud of. Both of Dale's cheeks suddenly flushed like ripe fruit. He tensed inwardly, thinking this was a bit too close, wasn't it? At dawn in the Duke's courtyard, Dale winced, thinking his master had just startled him, probably because he still saw him as a child. Don't lose focus. This isn't the time. His expression changed, returning to seriousness. Time to train. Suddenly, a giant ice wall rose up in the middle of the yard. The ice wall surged, and Dale's palm unleashed a powerful light. Chunks of ice shot out like bullets in rapid succession. Ice rounds 0012 gauge. They became spherical ice bullets like water globes. The crystals detonated, releasing intense energy. Dale stood firm, controlling and deflecting the incoming water spheres. He stood behind the ice shield and laughed. Next time, try slug rounds. Suddenly, a distant voice cut through the air. Dale. It was Charlotte, her face sweaty as she looked on. You're training here too. Dale nodded yes. You too, Miss Charlotte. She replied softly. Just practicing the footwork Sir Helmet taught. Dale asked, you like swordsmanship, don't you? Charlotte stammered, huh? Oh, yes. They were silent for a few seconds before she spoke. Hey, I'm sorry for acting on my own. Was I too rude to you, Dale? Young Master Dale. He nodded yes, I'll admit you were rude. But this time I'll let it slide. Just this once. Charlotte brightened, really. He nodded yes. So don't be so rigid. She said, gently, all right. They both leaned against a tree in the cold. The weather here was pleasant, even swinging a sword until night. My body cools down immediately. Dale saw Charlotte's expression relax a bit. Is that so? I didn't expect anyone to think like me. It's actually nice. The scene of Charlotte and Dale chatting happily was pleasant. Elena smiled. Time really flies. Our son is already this age. Saxon added, they look good together, don't they? Elena nodded. We should keep an eye on the two of them. It seems what you needed has fallen into place. A mother's duty is to guide her son, to be honest with his feelings. Not long after, on the outskirts of the ducal domain, locals bowed politely and said, thank you as always, madam. Elena smiled gently. It's nothing, please continue taking care of your health. In the slums, where beggars and the homeless lined the streets. Their mother often came personally to help them. Every week, she brought food and necessities and supported employment. Dale looked at her and thought that starting this year, he and Charlotte would also accompany their mother. Charlotte hurried over. "What's wrong?" A boy in common clothes grabbed her hand. "Help me." The boy's voice sounded desperate as he told Charlotte, "My mother is critically ill." He kept sobbing and shouting loudly, "Please help me." Dale ran after Charlotte and the boy, thinking it was extremely suspicious. They'd have to leave their escorting knights behind and run into the maze of alleys. Targeting Charlotte without involving adults was suspicious enough. A figure on a rooftop was watching Dale run below. He had seen that person. That one was from the Thieves' Guild, probably sent by the Holy Swordsman. "I knew it, their target is Charlotte, but they're a bit blatant about it." The boy stopped and said, "Wait a moment. I'll call my mother out." Charlotte hesitated. "Huh. Oh, okay." Suddenly someone stepped out, slowly smiling. "Well then, what are noble children doing, coming to this dangerous area? We only have business with that young lady. I'd advise the young master to be quiet and go home. If you stick around here, you'll get hurt." He smiled wickedly and shouted, "Dale Saxon have sworn to protect the Orhart girl from scum like you." The thief chuckled mockingly. "Oh my, how chivalrous. But looking at the situation, that might not be the best idea. Looks like kid needs a lesson from life to gain some experience." Charlotte turned back frightened and whispered, "Dale, I don't have a sword." He smiled reassuringly. "It's fine, don't be afraid. This is the perfect chance to try out Shadow Mirror's new move, under the guise of legitimate self-defense." The band of thieves rushed in from all sides, toward Dale and Charlotte. He quickly commanded his power, sweeping them all up. "There!" The leader angrily shouted insults. "Dodge, you idiots!" Dale thought, smiling inwardly. He's quick to notice, probably high level. A powerful black-purple light spun in his ring. The whole group was drawn in and couldn't escape. No, everything had been calculated by Dale. His shadow mirror technique he discovered after placing 2 rings turned images into a parasitic form that moves on its own and transforms targets into the undead. His expression showed a hint of fear as he witnessed it. Each of his men was being easily felled by the vortex. What is that thing doing? Suddenly a giant man appeared behind Dale. The giant growled loudly, I'm starving. The man caught in the vortex was terrified. It was an undead. Finally the leader shouted, what are you waiting for? Kill it now. He gritted his teeth in anger. Even if he's the Duke Saxon's son, he'll die from one slice. His foot moved, gathering momentum to leap up. He moved nimbly, his figure hard to catch. A green light flowed from his palm. No one could block his mana-infused poison darts in an alley like this. But Dale's dark magic cloak had blocked his throwing knives. Damn it. The leader ground his teeth and sword in hand, leapt down from above. The cloak suddenly opened a small slit. Water spheres continuously struck his body from the duel. 0012 gauge barrels. They flew at high speed through his body, blood spraying everywhere. Charlotte hid behind the wall, watching Dale with worry. The giant was frenziedly devouring his men. Dale watched him struggling to stay standing. He couldn't be killed with a single shot. The man had a very sturdy aura. Blood streamed from his mouth, and his pupils were sharp. Not yet. The moment he finished speaking, the boy's dark power sliced the man's body into pieces. The giant still frenziedly drove his sharp nails into people, blood pouring down like rain. So hungry, so hungry. Dale coolly withdrew his dark power. He looked at Charlotte huddled in a corner in fear. Are you all right? She stammered. I am. Another man came running up from behind and saw that all his comrades had been wiped out. He had barely taken a step when a green ray pierced through his ankle, freezing it. He screamed in pain, I'll help me. While Dale, utterly nonchalant, said go back, the man writhed on the ground. I'll tell you everything I know. Dale spoke sternly. Everything you know. He stammered, yes, I'll tell it all. So, suddenly, just as he finished, a water sphere pierced the center of his forehead. Dale looked on board. I've lost interest again. The last surviving man from that group was easily dispatched by Dale. As well, Charlotte glanced around anxiously and said frightened, This is the true face of House Saxon that people fear, and the very power that protects you. Dale asked, seeing it up close, how is it? Are you afraid? Charlotte nodded a little. But it's all right. You fought to protect me, didn't you? She had once knelt before him. I made up my mind the moment I swore. If your house becomes the shield that protects me, then one day I will raise my sword for you. Thank you for teaching me what the future truly means. I will keep growing stronger. Dale's face showed astonishment at what she said. His gaze changed. Part of the reason Dale accepted Charlotte was his remorse over Bardell from 24 years ago. He gently extended his hand to Charlotte. Dale smiled to himself, thinking, so Charlotte choosing to become Dale's sword. She beamed, blushing as she reached her hand out to him. A gesture Charlotte felt carried deeper meaning than Dale might realize. At the same time, at Count Brandenburg's house, the old man now looked furious, his expression exceedingly ugly. Damn it. I know inviting the Count here is difficult, but I must invite you to the Saxon ducal domain. Saxonstern, please honor the friendship between our houses. Do not refuse this invitation. The old man raged. This was a summons from the Dark Duke to demand accountability, and not even a great holy swordsman could defy it. A few days later, at the Saxon ducal castle, he sat on his chair and spoke slowly. I'm glad you went to the trouble of coming all the way. Here, Count. Brandenburg stared at him in fright, unable to look away. Saxon continued, I didn't expect you to arrive so soon, so please forgive the modest reception. Brandenburg awkwardly placed a hand to his chest. Nothing is more urgent than the Duke's summons. His eyes slid toward Dale and Charlotte, those slippery little eels. After the uproar in the ducal domain, a wave of anxiety spread across the empire, especially since it was a daytime kidnapping. I believe I know why you summoned me here. But as a sword loyal to the emperor, how could I possibly be involved in such a disgraceful incident? A dark power with a black, purple light was flying toward Brandenburg. The old man was trying to fend it off with his sword. What kind of wind is that? The bodies of two of Brandenburg's men were withering. Oh, my lord. Each limb of the two men was being seared. Spare our lives. Brandenburg recoiled in fear. Even the holy knights of Magdalene couldn't resist. His face filled with terror as he looked around. This magic is. Saxon coldly cast a formation with a black-purple light. Advanced dark magic of Voidstorm. Brandenburg cried out, Your Grace. He ordered solemnly for them to kneel, holy swordsmen. The old man snapped. Duke, do you grasp the gravity of your current actions? Saxon remained cold and continued. I advise you to listen carefully. Count. Brandenburg ground his teeth in anger. There won't be a second warning. He thought in fear. Damn, though the Dark Duke has a point. Brandenburg's knees buckled. He hadn't expected things to escalate this far. He said clearly, But you know I called you here for the sake of peace. And if you dare lay a hand on the Saxon children again, I will wipe out every remnant of House Brandenburg. I demand you engrave this in your heart. You've had a long journey and must be tired. Count, please rest and warm yourself. He bowed his head and said softly, I am deeply grateful for your generosity, Your Grace, but unfortunately, the situation will not allow me to remain long in your domain. Saxon nodded, understood. Then pray that your journey home goes without incident. Dale smiled wickedly. Well, my father showed Count Brandenburg, one of the Emperor's most loyal attendants, will become the fuse to set the Empire alight. For now it's only a small spark, but soon the fire will catch. And our duty will be to sever the Holy Swordsman's head when the world learns that the Holy Swordsman was forced to kneel before the Dark Duke. The pillars of the Empire will tremble. Within Duke Saxon's office, Saxon boldly removed the cloth to reveal what lay beneath. She hesitated. This is, Saxon explained, these are the bodies of the thieves' guild members who attacked Dale. Sephia's face went pale as she said, all of this was done by Dale. Limbs scattered, riddled with holes, organs spilled out. For the first time in her life, Sephia began to doubt her methods of instruction. Saxon said slowly, As you can see, steering Dale's extraordinary talent down the right path will require your wisdom. Sephia, I want to appoint you as chief advisor. It seems she understood what he meant, not merely as a tutor anymore, but now under House Saxon's banner. Dale very much needs you, Sephia. I cannot train the boy alone. With your support, things will change. Sephia hesitated for a moment, then mustered her courage and answered, I understand. Understanding how that child sees the world is the top priority. Right now, in the grand, magnificent hall of the castle, time passed and Dale's 10th birthday arrived. Unlike last year, this time, representatives of the Emperor's faction also attended. Suddenly, someone approached Dale, among whom the most notable was a young man with red hair standing before him. Welcome, Marquis Uris. He smiled slyly. A pleasure to meet young Master Dale. Earlier in the grand hall. Oh my, look at these dishes. Wow, truly befitting House Saxon. What a splendid scene. Hard to believe. We're in the Northern Territories. Haha, indeed. Managing a ducal domain, far from the capital, is probably overkill. Dale stood there, listening intently to every word the guest said. He glanced elsewhere, at the central nobles from the capital, the so-called imperial faction. They're the greatest power, with the widest influence across the empire, acting in the emperor's name. The reason for their presence at tonight's banquet was obvious. This was a thinly veiled warning, a message from the imperial court that they would not tolerate any insult to the holy swordsman. And the envoy chosen to deliver that message was now standing right before us. Uris bowed solemnly. You must be young Master Dale. I am Crimson Marquis Uris. Very pleased to meet you. You thought him the head of the Crimson Magic Tower, a seeker of flame, wrathful and powerful within the Order's bounds. The mages of the Crimson Tower are famed across the empire for their fanatical belief that might makes right. Thus, they never hesitate to act as enforcers for mad ambitions. I myself was once subject to all manner of experimental alterations by the Crimson Tower. Uris said plainly, a prodigy of House Saxon. I hear you possess a magical talent unmatched in the entire empire. It said, you single-handedly eliminated a whole pack of orcs to protect your family's knights. And you're only 9 years old. Truly, the Duke's son Dale flashed a confident smile. He also bowed. I wish you an enjoyable evening. Having such an extravagant birthday every year is really tiring. Dale thought, I'd rather be training with Charlotte right now, but she's serving as a maid for Elena. And if rumors spread that the holy swordsman's daughter was sparring with me, it might bring trouble on her. Suddenly, a piercing scream came from behind Dale. Petro shouted loudly, too. Stand still, you insolent servant. He frowned. The scream, could it be? Dale began running toward where the commotion was happening. Evsob, please, I beg you, I'm a House Saxon. Petro angrily scolded. A lowly servant like you dares invoke the Duke's name. Isn't everyone busy celebrating the young master's birthday? Instead of standing there wasting time, wouldn't you have more fun going with some women? If you resist again, I'll slit your throat. He began pinning Eve against the bushes. Behave yourself. Dale suddenly appeared from behind. And what do you think you're doing? He turned back in panic. Young Master Dale. Petro took a step back, holding a knife. Young Master Dale, what are you doing coming over here? He stammered. Have you ever enjoyed the pleasures of women? You still look very green. Surely you have no experience, right? Or shall I, Petro, personally teach you a thing or two? He was being held by the throat, young Master Dale. It seemed he was a little drunk. I'll give you a very good time. Suddenly Dale summoned magical power. Don't worry. His gaze sharp. I'll get you out of here right away. In a world built on rank and order, no one would expect to be the first to strike. A razor-cold shard of ice suddenly flew through Petro's ear. He collapsed to the ground immediately and released Eve. Dale still looked coldly at him, with no intention of backing down, even though opposing an agent of the Emperor was by no means a wise choice. He shouted, what do you think you're doing? Young Master Dale, order him to kneel before me. Petro couldn't believe his ears. What? Dale said sternly and loudly. Didn't you hear me? He pointed at his face. Kneel down and apologize to Eve right now. As she said, she serves our household and is a member of House Saxon. Petro ground his teeth in anger. You Saxon brat. Young Master Dale. Regrettably, I stand here today as a representative of His Majesty. Insulting me to defend the honor of a lowly maid is also an insult to the Emperor. He replied coolly, "Then let me ask you this. Does His Majesty take pleasure in assaulting noble servants?" He frowned, huh? Petro sat on the ground stammering. "How dare you speak such nonsense?" Dale growled, "Each word this is my final warning." Yuri's witnessing the scene couldn't help but smile. As he knelt down, he laughed excitedly. What an interesting turn of events. Saxon suddenly shouted, "Dale, what's going on here?" He answered this man attempted to assault a Saxon maid. He still spoke loudly. "And because of that ye show insolence to Lord Petro." The man nodded, "Yes, Duke." The young master overreacted. Dale refused to stop. "Did I give you permission to stand up?" The honored guests from the capital bear the responsibility to act on behalf of His Majesty. Yet this man dared commit a disgraceful act, attempting to rape a lowly maid, and thereby stain His Majesty's reputation. Therefore I cannot stand idly by and let such a shameful act go unpunished. Yuri suddenly laughed loudly. "Haha, very well, what a clever boy. Truly everything you said is the truth. Just think an envoy, entrusted to represent the Emperor, would stoop to doing something vile with a maid." Petro cried out in fear, Lord Yuri's. A scorch mark appeared on the palm of his hand. Fear drained from Petro's face entirely. The scum. He stood up and ran screaming in terror. "Spare me." At this moment, Yuri's demeanor became extremely terrifying as he smiled wickedly. A spiral of flames shot from his palm toward the fleeing Petro. He was scorched by the roaring flames covering his body. "It hurts, it's so hot." Yuri slowly said to "You are not wrong. It is my duty to purge the vermin who dare humiliate the Empire and the royal family. I very much look forward to your future, young Master Dale." Dale's face turned solemn as he gave him a sharp look. By then the matter had settled. The Emperor's faction left, restoring peace to House Saxon. Later on a morning after the feast at the castle, young Master Dale, Eve stood beside the bed and gently said, "Is it time to get up?" Dale, still drowsy, replied slowly, "Thanks for waking me," she said shyly. "It was nothing." He asked, "Is there something you wanted to say?" Eve hesitated. Thank you, sir. Serving the young master is my honor." Dale thought to himself, was she only hesitating because of that phrase? I've lived in two worlds, yet this feeling is still strange. I'll have to get used to it. His expression softened and he smiled happily. "Thank you, Eve. I am the eldest son of House Saxon. I understand the weight of the name, and I will exploit it fully as long as the Empire declines." Saxon said sternly, "You're very smart, Dale, but your recent behavior seems odd." His face remained composed. "Why are you speaking like that?" Dale replied slowly, "If the otherworldly hero and the holy sword Bardell hadn't both died in that battle, then the next place the hero's blade would point to would be the Duchy of Saxon." He was surprised by what Dale had just said. That statement was blasphemous. He asked gravely, "How can you be so sure?" Dale's change in attitude was because he had learned of the Empire's plot against House Saxon from his previous life. The Empire had abandoned the hero. They feared that, once the chain of that golden gift was broken, the hunting hound would go mad. Even though the otherworldly hero had defeated the Demon King, the Empire still didn't eradicate the evil completely in the Demon King's territory. On the contrary, they issued a mad decree to turn the Demon King's land into royal territory and unilaterally force our house to make the sacrifice, and even handed that land over to your father. If the darkness on that land is not fully cleansed, our blood will continue to flow. Moreover, both people within the Empire and beyond the northern border regard House Saxon as a cursed family. Just as they discarded the hero, they will try to eliminate threats from within. That is, those who could cause harm among us. Saxon asked again. They abandoned the hero. How could they? He interrupted. This is only the inference and reasoning I drew from the records. I read. Logically, nothing else fits better. On the surface, the hero died with honor. After his battle with the holy sword. Bardell. Surprise is understandable. After all, very few people know the truth about the hero's death. If your hypothesis is correct, then the empire is merely a giant that seeks to suppress all the smaller states. He pondered and looked straight at him. The boy's intelligence surpassed his years. So what do you think House Saxon should do? He answered slowly. House Saxon cannot coexist with the empire. Suddenly Dale's face darkened as he emphasized. Therefore, Saxon's attitude now was also unbearable. We must destroy the empire. The air in the office grew suffocating. Dale growled. Do you understand what you're saying? He replied calmly. I don't mean we should raise an army and start a war. Immediately, Dale hesitated for a moment and said in 10 years. He asked in surprise. 10 years. He explained right now. Anti-imperial leagues across the continent are pushing for independence. Even vassals like you, Duke Saxon, are afraid the empire will point its blade at them. The economy is in decline, and banditry runs rampant every day. And although the 7 Continents Unification Treaty has ended, the consequences of war are only getting worse. By then we will need to build forces to protect our house from the empire. We will support the separatist factions in various regions, and I have presented a plan to overthrow the empire until the sun set. Behind a magnificent castle, Dale paused his presentation and asked, What do you think, father? Suddenly, he merely smiled slyly for a moment and said nothing. Saxon laughed loudly. Your talent truly knows no bounds, he said confidently. You see a vision I cannot. No wonder you're my son. From today you will no longer be merely the Duke's eldest, or just a 10-year-old child. I will regard you as the heir. You will lead House Saxon. He was surprised. Father, Saxon said gently, as head of the family, I will listen to and value your words. He smiled, thinking he had waited a long time for this day. When I have enough power to act, the authority of House Saxon will be by my own hands. He continued with a smile. Do not hesitate, Dale. What will you do for our house? He replied, You said you would treat me as an equal, didn't you, father? Then, allow me to take the magical trial in the necropolis. The magical trial, a competition that determines a mage's rank, where they face the guardians of the magic tower. Defeating higher-level guardians elevates the challenger, and the strongest earns the title of tower captain. The one at the pinnacle is granted the title of Magic Tower Lord. He asked again, Do you really want to go to that deadly place? It's too early. You haven't completed the 3rd circle yet. Dale confident soon, father. He worried normally. One reaches the 3rd circle only in their early 20s. Even for you, advancing from the 2nd to the 3rd is difficult. Dale resolute. This decision is for both me and House Saxon. He was surprised. So why? He explained carefully. If I can prove myself through the tower trial, my position as heir will further solidify your status, and I will gain renown. That silences the rumors. Saxon asked gently, Is that why you want to participate in the tower trial? Dale's demeanor was full of confidence and determination. Yes. He nodded very well. I will leave this matter to your judgment. Dale excited, Thank you, father. I will prove it to you. A few days later at the vast necropolis city, people were already standing before the city gate to welcome them. Those in the carriage of House Saxon stepped down. They had arrived. The attendants bowed solemnly. Welcome, Black Duke. Dale's face beside him looked unpleasant, thinking to himself, had he gone too far again? Whispers and gossip began. Look, it's Duke Saxon and young Master Dale, too. Ha, they say. He's an unprecedented magical prodigy in the Empire. Is it true? But he looks a bit unwell today, doesn't he? Hey, I'm serious. I've heard his swordsmanship rivals, the knights in the ducal household. Velik curled his lip ridiculous. I'm Velik, the Academy's top graduate, the one destined to win this tower trial. Tom added, that noble looks so frail. He'd fall with the slightest touch. Eris appeared with ceremony and bowed. I pay respects to the Tower Master. Saxon, gently long, time no see, Eris. She smiled, it's an honor to serve you. Young Master Dale. Eris is the chief steward of the tower, handling all administrative duties. When Duke Moore is absent, Saxon turned to him and said, during the trial, she will assist you. He nodded yes. Father. Dale stepped forward cheerfully. I look forward to your help. Ares guided, yes, young master, please this way. There are a total of 59 graduated candidates waiting for you. All will participate in the trial with you. The doors suddenly opened. Right in front of him, and Ares. Inside were countless people. These were the ones who would compete in the tower. Trial. Greetings to everyone present. I am Ares Tower Captain and Chief Administrator. Now I will explain. The first round of the Moore Dark Tower trial. Check the necklace around your neck. The life chain necklace. This trial is a survival match, a life point contest. Each necklace contains a magic, protective ward for its wearer, and a life point when you hit an opponent. By commanding the undead avatars on this battlefield, the opponent's necklace activates its ward and shatters, meaning elimination. An attacker who lands a valid strike gains 1 life point on their own necklace. A contestant who reaches 3 points in total advances to the next tier. Finally, anyone who uses magical artifacts is considered cheating and is immediately disqualified. Dale thought it over. Those rules are indeed a quick way to weed out the weak. Suddenly his gaze sharpened. However, Felix suddenly, that monster, he's young and already a 3rd rank mage. I told you we should take that monster down first. Tom awkwardly asked, are we allowed to attack him? Velik reassured, don't worry. From a moment we stepped in, we're opponents. Dale smirked inwardly. He's so confident. Let's see if his ability matches his words. The group of candidates cast their magic formations toward Dale, beginning the trial. Velik began to swing his palm, channeling power. He summoned undead creatures that manifested before him. They seized weapons and lunged at where Dale stood. A large undead readied itself to strike him from above, but he quickly formed a dark barrier to absorb the blow. They were taken by surprise by Dale's response to the situation. A colossal undead appeared behind him, many times larger. When Hadad arrived, the giant undead stood firm and growled loudly, unleashing its strength. Velik watched his undead frozen and said, that's water element magic. The giant undead leapt with razor-sharp claws. Don't tell me he's a dual element mage. Because Velik's undead were frozen, Dale's undead easily defeated them in a single strike. Velik roared, how dare you touch my army of revenants? The giant undead wrapped an arm protectively around Dale's body. He smiled and said, it's useless. I've enhanced them with ice armor. Dale continuously commanded his undead to fight fiercely. Velik pointed, isn't using water element magic against the rules? Only necromancy and undead control magic are allowed. All other enhancements are forbidden. Dale answered yes. But there's no rule that bans me from empowering the undead with ice magic, right? If the trial hasn't been halted, then it seems I'm correct. Felix still showed no sign of stopping. You two hold those revenants back and focus your attacks directly on him. Undead kept emerging from Felix's magic formation, overwhelming by sheer numbers. Dale's expression changed, hesitating, he reconsidering. Using conventional magic was also forbidden. He inspected each undead that was about to attack him. So then, suddenly Dale took a running start. There was no other choice. He easily broke through with great speed. Dale's demeanor now was not fearful, but extremely confident as he charged straight toward them. In the blink of an eye, he evaded the undead strike. He gripped his sword tightly. Got you. He successfully discarded the weapon. With his other hand, Dale swung a fist filled with power and struck their arms. He quickly seized the massive weapon in his hand. Dale planted his feet and swung the sword. In a fierce counterattack, Tom panicked. Impossible. How are my revenant troops cut down so easily? Velik gaped. That sword is not normal. He reforged bone to reinforce the blade's durability, and a purple light glows around the sword. The undead began the battle. by striking the ground with their swords. Dale quickly leapt away from that spot and soared into the air. His face showed a fighting spirit, filled with utmost confidence. The undead were felled easily, after just one of his strikes. Velik frowned. He even defeated my last revenant, a mage wielding a sword with such skill. Dale swiftly defeated everyone, then approached Velik. He stammered and pleaded, "Please, young Master Dale, I surrender." He smiled excitedly. Dale kept laughing and said loudly, "It's not like anyone actually dies, so why be afraid?" As soon as he finished, Dale struck him on the head with the sword's blade. Velik spun around, rubbing the lump on his head, muttering, "You monster." Everyone seated above shouted the results are in. Young Master. Dale passed the trial alone with 60 life points. Dale looked up proudly. "Watch closely. This will be my beginning." The fierce monster raised the magic in its hand. The tower's second-level trial is to defeat the guardian creature, called the Flesh Golem, usually the surviving. First-level contestants cooperate to take it down. But what disrupted that tradition was Dale. He eliminated them all himself. The rules differ from level 1. Any magic school may now be used, but the ban on using artifacts still applies. That's more than enough for me. This is the perfect opportunity to test the limits of the third round. The golem delivered a crushing punch to the ground, causing the earth to explode outward. It paused for a few seconds, as if waiting for the dust to clear, wearing a triumphant smile. Suddenly Dale's magic appeared, enveloping his entire sturdy arm. The golem froze in stunned silence, while he stood amid the rubble unscathed. Dale cast a shadow spell with a triumphant smile. Accelerated decay. Saxon watched curiously from outside. Ares praised approvingly. The young master's magic is truly unusual. Why did he choose to rot it from the inside, instead of destroying it outright? Dale quietly watched the golem's body fade from the world and thought, in his past life, when facing monsters like this tactic combined precision and high firepower. It was called biochemical warfare. He drew his mana back, covered his nose with his hand, and snorted in disgust. It stinks. I wonder if they understand what they're witnessing. The disgusting process of biochemical warfare is now being simulated by dark magic. That day, Dale passed the level 10 test, setting a new record. He was given 4 days rest before the 11th trial. Meanwhile, to recover after the slaughter at level 1, a retest for the other 59 contestants was authorized, of course excluding Dale. That same night, after the trial by the fountain, Dale stood there in a daze. Suddenly, someone called to him from behind, "Dale, you did exceptionally well." And seeing her, Dale joyfully called out Master Sephia. "It's all thanks to your teaching." Sephia nodded contentedly. "Hearing you say that makes me proud." Right after that, Dale faltered as if something caught in his throat. "Could you, Master Sephia, go on a date with me?" She was so surprised she repeated the word date. While she was flustered, Dale quickly proposed. "There's a festival down the street. Let's go." Sephia, helpless, indulged him. "All right, let's go." She thought to a date. That's not entirely wrong. Good heavens, he probably misunderstood the meaning of date. He, on the other hand, thought differently. Was this the corrupt intent people always spoke of? At the Necropolis Festival, the crowds bustled with activity. In some secluded corner, Sephia asked Dale the trials were tough. "You must be tired." He shook his head, and "It's fine. And we still have a few days before we must continue." She smiled kindly. "Is that so? That's good then." While they were talking, both suddenly fell quiet, as the atmosphere turned unusually still. To ease the tension, he changed the subject. "The moon looks beautiful tonight, doesn't it?" Sephia looked up in that direction and agreed. "Indeed it does." He sighed deeply in frustration, suddenly at a loss for words. But this quiet was rather comfortable. It's always been like this with Sephia, perhaps because she trusted him from the start. But he found himself wanting to grow closer. A few days earlier, when Dale reached the third round, he finally understood what confronting the inner boundary meant. Dale's nose began to bleed from overexertion. He pinched his nose and resolved to surpass the limit. I must push the mana from round 2 to the brink. Only by enduring the mana's rampage can one hold on to round 3. The interlocking magic circles gradually revealed themselves. Suddenly, a silver sword surged up from deep within Dale's inner self, erupting from his heart. He looked at it pensively. This black sword. Now Dale stood amid a sky filled with snow. He looked around, searching his mind for an answer. This place is... Suddenly Sephia's voice flowed in. When you calm yourself deeply, the inner realm will open. He bowed his head and understood her meaning. So this is it. This is the inner realm, the world of Dale's perception. There was originally nothing here, just an absolute void. And in that empty world, Master Sifia reached out her hand to him. Perhaps that is why she became the one, to bring light into his world. Thinking this, the words suddenly burst from his. Master, I like you. Sophia couldn't believe her ears and wanted to correct him. What did you just say? Dale declared plainly and directly. I said I like you, Master. She smiled softly, since she still saw him as a child deep down. Sifia bent down and hugged Dale tightly. Is that so? She replied in a warm, low voice. I like you very much, too. Dale accepted her affection in a way he hadn't intended. Thank you, Master. Living 2 lives has its advantages. A few days later, a peaceful morning at Dale's manor. Inside the level 11 trial tower, Dale gloomily muttered. There's still no progress with Sifia at all. She probably just thinks it's childish. Affection from an 11-year-old. Now focus on the test. Ares announced that the trial format would be 1-on-1, the winner advances to level 12. He held a spell book and greeted. An honor to face young Master Dale. He is the 3-round Master Albert Rosenheim. Don't expect me to go easy just because you're a child. The level 11 trial allows the use of all types of artifacts and magic, meaning the life chain may not guarantee survival. Artifact limits have been lifted. I no longer need to restrain myself. I will crush him immediately to make an impression. Show the power gap. Before the referee finishes announcing the first move, the match will start. As the battle began, Albert launched a lethal strike that Dale could hardly withstand. He sneered and taunted. I'm not like the academy rookies you've faced. Your winning streak ends here. Albert used magic to create multiple arrows aimed at Dale. These are called shadow bolts. A look of annoyance crossed his face. Albert kept provoking. Let's see how you block this. With that, Albert launched all his projectiles at Dale. He continuously dodged one attack after another and successfully escaped that onslaught. Dale was furious because Albert cheated. Technically, even a 1-second early initiation before the signal is a violation. But the judges showed no sign of objection. They were curious about his abilities. Damn the talent system. Dale finally snapped with a wry remark. That's why I hate mages. After some attacks, Archimedes Albert began to intone something, to summon beings of mine. O those who have sworn to serve me forever. Servants from knights deeper than Blood Knight. It made Dale want to bury him alive. What itchy chant is that? But it was indeed stronger than a typical rookie's. Dale continuously dodged the attacks from the summoned minions. Albert smoothed his hair and acted like he was the, how long do you plan to keep dodging? How can you beat me that way? The henchmen lunged toward their only target, Dale. He could no longer stand still. His magic began to stir. Dale quickly sent all of Albert's henchmen back to where they came from. He curled his lip, thinking victory was already in hand. No more tricks. The magic he'd been hiding exploded. Within the bloated bodies of the henchmen, a series of explosions erupted, creating chaos and upheaval. Albert did not hesitate to declare, "Today, I'm the winner. Young Master Dale." The smile vanished from his face, replaced by panic. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by panic. Wait, when did that happen? While he was still dazed, a shadow rose from behind and called anyone there. Dale appeared there and mocked. You look terrified. A clever sneak attack. The magic enveloping him was actualification. Fear showed in Albert's eyes after the remark. But defeating me is far from over. From beneath him, spectral voices whimpered. So hungry, so hungry. Can we eat? Eat, eat. They begged with Dale's mysterious smile, let us eat. At his ascent, they pounced, but not to fill their bellies. The other students watching shuddered. Wails of agony echoed across the arena. They nearly devoured every ounce of Albert's essence. Seems they're so hungry they're excited. He kept begging frantically, "Spare me," seeing that Dale wasn't completely heartless, and ordered them to withdraw. The result was clear as the loudspeaker announced. The winner of round 1 is Dale. He tapped his chest, closed his eyes, and whispered while the other competitors trembled. Now, they all went pale thinking about what would come next. Who wants to go to round 2? No one wanted to face Dale anymore. "I surrender, I want to live." Dale smiled faintly as things went his way. From round 3 onward, no one in the tower could match Dale. All his wins, except round 1, were decisive. Dale continued to hone and shape his 3 magic circles, while defeating each guardian. It wasn't until he reached level 20 that a formidable opponent appeared. This one was called by everyone the Headless Knight, the Void Rider. The Headless Knight was a creation of one of the Black Tower captains, a completely different kind of opponent. Even as young Master Dale, you won't rise any higher. Dale raised his hand and magic poured forth. Everything going as planned is boring. His eyes went wide and pale, as if signaling the beast's awakening. A surge of magic began to press toward the knight. The atmosphere tensed everyone. What's happening down there? The knight, for reasons unknown, bowed before Dale. Look, everyone in the stands was utterly astonished. The Headless Knight was kneeling. Who could have guessed that inside Dale's inner world, things were different? The knight respectfully handed his sword to him, for him to decide. Dale did not hesitate to order, "End your own life." And then the battle ended without any obstacle. Dale gave the knight a rueful smile. Loyal enough to abandon your duty as a guardian. Suddenly he realized the problem wasn't only that. Oh no. Dale looked up at the stands and saw so many people, as hard as stone. It was probably a bit over the top. A creation that betrayed its maker and swore loyalty. To me, that alone is proof. My power equals that of a Black Tower captain. I never meant to go that far. Without overthinking it, Dale left. He'd proven enough time to go home. Those behind whispered, "Where is he going?" "That's the exit, right?" "Why has he left already?" Dale told himself, "Although I could go further, there are limits I shouldn't cross. Above is a place even monsters fear, something no one knows." And with that, Dale's trial ended. Outside, all the students had lined up neatly. The trial tower was the same. The tower's master arrived. The entire Black Tower stood rigid as if in review. Both nobility and tower captains pledged loyalty, and every mage in the Black Tower showed respect to both father and son. Thanks to Dale's outstanding performance, the Northern Territories rallied once more under the Duke's banner. A few days later, in the Northern Duchy of Saxon, knights were doing their utmost to wipe out the monsters. In a single move, they had nearly completed the task. As they attacked, they shouted slogans. For young Master Dale, for House Saxon, for successfully completing the trial tower. Duke Saxon appointed Dale commander of the ORC Extermination Force. Wherever his extermination squad went, monsters were destroyed. It was a mission not typically given to a 10-year-old, yet no one doubted Dale's leadership. Thus the heir of the Black Duke gradually began to unite the North. A few mornings later, at his manor, Dale stood at attention, and "Duke, we've killed 145 orcs." Saxon asked directly about the main issue, cavalry casualties. According to his report, 3 were slightly wounded. No fatalities. Saxon asked further to gather confirmation. "Did you use magic to protect them?" Dale replied, frankly, no. This was entirely the result of Saxon blades. When it was done, he couldn't help praising him. "Well done, Dale." Helmet turned to boast to the Duke. The Duke's young master, Dale, has truly grown used to commanding large cavalry units. Dale modestly patted his head and declined, all thanks to Sir Helmet's teachings. He recalled the past days with excitement. Uncle Helmet had taught him swordsmanship, tactics, and military strategy. Helmet pinned all his hopes on him. At this rate, it won't be long before the young master can lead a territorial war. Though excited, Dale remained patient and waited a territorial war. I've been looking forward to the next phase. After a while, Charlotte swung her sword as if in a match, and this time her opponent was Dale. Charlotte kept unleashing powerful, spinning sword strikes, but unfortunately, he managed to dodge in time. Not stopping there, Dale slipped behind her, catching her off guard so she couldn't react. A second later, Charlotte raised her sword, just in time to block his thrust. They fought from one end of the field to the other, neither yielding. For a moment, Charlotte nearly struck Dale. He praised and encouraged Charlotte. She has improved a lot. She showed her displeasure and refused his compliment. Still not as good as you. He laughed with delight. Am I teasing you too much? Charlotte sulked and ignored him. After all, he's a level 3 mage and has even passed level 20 of the tower. Since then, everyone keeps calling him Young Master Dale this and Young Master Dale that. Don't they ever get bored? Seeing her like that, Dale wanted to comfort her. Don't worry. He encouraged her. You'll get stronger too. Charlotte, hearing that, her face flushed. Dale thought to himself that at only 10 years old, Charlotte already exceeded any standard. Although embarrassed, Charlotte tried to be noble. They don't treat me like a child. Dale corrected her. But you're a child. So are you. Dale pointed at himself and wondered me. I'm grown up, you know. She waved her hand dismissively. Yeah, whatever. Their duel ended very quickly. Now, then, young Master Dale, Helmert, sat opposite Dale and laid out the general pieces. Today's lesson. The pieces on the board that caught his attention were the hammer and anvil tactics in battle, when cavalry are deployed on one or both flanks. Predicting the answer, he said immediately, the key is, the cavalry must break through the enemy's flank and encircle them. Meanwhile, the infantry attacks. Helmut affirmed exactly. The hammer and anvil tactic is named because it's like placing metal on an anvil and striking it with a hammer. This tactic relies heavily on cavalry. Dale rubbed his chin and guessed. Indeed, this is only feasible with dark cavalry. In any world, the method of fighting is similar. Suddenly he realized something. Oh, that's right. How is Charlotte's training going? Helmut rubbed his chin and thought for a moment. Charlotte's progress, though not comparable to yours, is still extraordinary. The young lady has acquired a foundation in swordsmanship. Soon she will grasp Saxon's aura and sword techniques. However, there's one worrying thing. Dale anticipated what he was about to say. It's the compatibility between Charlotte's sword style and ours, right? Mages refine mana into magic through the inner rings of the heart. Knights refine mana via aura transformation techniques. Mages build magic towers to master philosophy. Knights establish legions to teach swordsmanship. Among them, the Northern Dark Cavalry are like straight river war chariots. The strength of the Night Raven cavalry is a prime example of crushing the battlefield with sheer force. The problem is, Charlotte's swordsmanship focuses heavily on speed and graceful movement, wielding a fast, nimble sword. With that talent, could she reach the lowest rank of the 7 great swordsmen? But she would never become the top swordsman. A striking motion that was both powerful and graceful was launched. The head of the 7 great swords, the position once held by her father. At this, Dale was a little distracted and blurted out, the flower sword. Helmut, reading his expression, sadly said for her sake, if only that sword technique still existed. Helmut recounted the disappearance of the secret method, but it was lost with the downfall of the knightly kingdom. Dale stared intently at the knight piece on the table, his heart full of pity. Is it really gone from this world? After that, Dale had even fewer days of rest, balancing monster slaying with his studies. His reputation grew ever stronger. It was time to show the fruits of their training. Saxon, upon hearing the shocking news, exclaimed, "What? Has the neighboring domain under Baron Parker declared war to claim ownership of your copper mine?" The merchant confirmed, "Yes, sir." Dale rubbed his chin in confusion. In this world, borders between lands and states are unclear, but a minor noble challenging a higher-ranking noble was unthinkable. While reporting, he took something from his coat pocket. If I refuse to hand it over, and accept the declaration of war. Count Brandenburg has sided with the Baron. Plus this letter. They are prepared to send the order of St. Magdalena's cavalry in exchange for a share of the mine's profits. As soon as they heard this, father and son understood what was happening. Dale gritted his teeth in anger. So you want to play it like that? He had not forgotten the humiliation of that day. Fine, then they'd be given a taste of it right back. Dale, a clever boy with bright blue eyes, grinned slyly. It seemed he was challenging Count Brandenburg, wondering if this was how the man intended to toy with him. Dale recalled Brandenburg kneeling before his father. Since that day, he must have been focused on avenging the humiliation he suffered before the Dark Duke. Count Brandenburg, a gentleman with an angry expression and a neatly trimmed beard, contemplated the military situation. He realized that launching a direct territorial war would be too difficult, so he chose an inconvenient border region where Duke Saxon could not appear directly. He thought to himself. Dale softly called father. With a determined look and one hand on his chest, Dale asked Duke Saxon for permission to personally lead the Saxon family's knights into battle. However, Duke Saxon immediately and flatly refused. Duke Saxon looked down at Dale and explained that he was still too young to take command. Dale listened in silence as Duke Saxon continued to admonish him, reminding him that war between humans is not like hunting monsters, implying his lack of experience. The scene shifted to Baron Greenbelt, a noble with a short beard and russet attire, standing before Duke Saxon. Duke Saxon assured Baron Greenbelt that he would protect his mind, calming Greenbelt's worries. Dale stood beside Duke Saxon, his face downcast, showing clear disappointment at his father's decision, while Baron Greenbelt continued to express his gratitude. Dale sighed in frustration, annoyance evident on his face. Helmet comforted him when Dale voiced his disappointment and confusion about why Duke Saxon wouldn't listen. He advised him not to take the Duke's words to heart. Still, Helmet continued to console Dale, acknowledging that the Duke's refusal could be disheartening, but believing there must be a valid reason for the decision. Helmet smiled and said to Dale, "I prepared this for you, young master." He brought out a board resembling a chess set and asked Dale if he wanted to play a game with him. Dale looked at the board with curiosity. A flashback or illustration appeared, showing a grown man seated, playing a game similar to chess. Helmet explained the game goes by a different name here. Dale recognized it as a war game, and Helmet was surprised that he knew of it. Lord Milvas explained that it was a war simulation game with very complex rules, but mastering it would be of great benefit. Helmet laughed, ruffled Dale's hair, and said that if Dale played against him, and they discussed the art of war in depth. Suddenly Dale shouted that "Esset," then snatched up the board and ran off, prompting Helmer to ask in surprise where he was going. Dale stood before Duke Saxon's desk, causing him to exclaim in surprise what? Still holding the board, Dale looked straight at Duke Saxon and proposed, if he played and won, the Duke would allow him to join the territorial war. Duke Saxon asked again, astonished that Dale hadn't changed his mind. After everything he had said, with the board in hand, Dale presented his case to Duke Saxon. He had learned that war is not just a clash of force, but a profound strategic contest. Duke Saxon fell silent and listened. Dale asked the Duke to judge him by this game. Helmet, looking uneasy, hurriedly apologized and said he would talk some sense into Dale. However, Duke Saxon waved off Helmet's words, saying no, let the boy be. With a radiant smile and determined eyes, Dale stood beside Helmet, as Duke Saxon accepted his condition. If you win, I will let you decide for yourself. Duke Saxon smiled faintly, accepted Dale's thanks, but emphasized that if Dale lost, he must abandon his intention to participate in the battle. The war game began. Duke Saxon made the first move on the board. All three focused on the game. Dale sat opposite Duke Saxon, while Helmet stood behind observing. Helmet appeared extremely surprised, while Dale smiled confidently. The game ended with Dale as the victor, although Duke Saxon had been somewhat accommodating, granting Dale advantages in peace. count, and favorable terrain. Dale still secured the final victory too, won over Duke Saxon himself. Dale looked at Duke Saxon and asked if he would keep his promise. Duke Saxon smiled faintly, surprised by the boy's bluntness. Duke Saxon asked when Dale had learned the game. Dale replied that he had found a rule book in the library a few years ago and began studying it. Dale winked, mischievously telling himself it was a lie. He thought that if he didn't say that, people would find him even stranger. After hearing Dale's explanation, Duke Saxon rose, looked down at the boy, and declared firmly, "A promise is a promise." Duke Saxon returned to his throne, his face stern but full of trust, officially entrusting command of the knights in the upcoming battle to Dale. Helmet stood beside Dale, still stunned and astonished by this weighty decision. Duke Saxon looked at Dale seriously, reminding him that no matter how high his hopes, with the honor of House Saxon at stake, failure was unacceptable. Duke Saxon stared straight at Dale, his voice commanding. "I will ask you one last time." Duke Saxon posed the final question. "Can you truly bear the full weight of this battle?" Dale replied with a confident smile, affirming his ability. Dale placed his hand on his chest, and declared to his father, "Yes. Please trust me, father. I will prove I can succeed." Duke Saxon smiled in satisfaction. "Very well," he instructed Dale. "Return only after you have demonstrated the results of your training." Some time later, the scene shifted to Count Brandenburg's Malbork Castle. An angry voice rang out. "Are you drinking and loafing in the slums again, Philip?" Count Brandenburg, his face full of rage, shouted. "There's a rumor that the young heir of House Saxon will personally lead their knights." Count Brandenburg looked at his son Philip, standing before him with a bottle in hand, and asked, "What the hell are you doing?" Philip replied smugly, "No need to worry, father." Philip, the Count's eldest son, sneered and declared, "Our opponent is at most a 10-year-old child." Count Brandenburg's face filled with fury as Philip continued, demanding permission to lead his father's knights to crush that arrogant brat from House Saxon. In a fit of rage at his son's arrogance and contempt for the enemy, Count Brandenburg slammed his fist down on the table, startling Philip. Philip collapsed to his knees, his face stunned and aching. Count Brandenburg mocked. "You say he's at most a 10-year-old child?" Philip stammered, speechless, utterly confused and terrified. Count Brandenburg looked at Philip, who was sobbing pitifully, and roared, "That arrogance from House Saxon, is it?" He continued to berate him, saying Dale was a monster Philip could never match, even if he tried for 100 years. Philip crouched on the floor, his face humiliated and hurt. Count Brandenburg straightened, pointed at Philip, and called him a useless insect, worse than a 10-year-old child. Count Brandenburg, furious, thought of Charlotte, silently cursing. "Like that, you should have kept Charlotte under control sooner." Count Brandenburg smiled slyly, towering over Philip, and said that in this battle, he would grant Philip the command of the knights. Philip, still dazed, hastily agreed. Count Brandenburg asked why Philip was so pleased, saying Philip would accomplish nothing on the battlefield. Philip, surprised, asked back, not understanding his father's meaning. Philip looked up in shock as Count Brandenburg said, "The battle would be led by Deputy Commander Milvis. Philip's role would be purely ceremonial." Count Brandenburg ordered Deputy Commander Milvis to take Philip away immediately. Philip cried out, "Father," in desperation, but could not change anything. Count Brandenburg turned his back and gazed out the window, thinking to himself, "Damn it, if it were me, I'd have gone to battle myself. But I can't unleash my full strength against the child." Count Brandenburg gritted his teeth, a flash of realization in his eyes as he thought, "Was this your calculation from the start, Duke Saxon?" In contrast to Count Brandenburg's anger and frustration, Dale broke into a radiant smile, with Helmet standing behind him, looking a bit helpless but supportive. A few days later, the story brings us to Greenbelt Castle, where Dale is about to arrive. Baron Greenbelt, anxious and with his hands clasped, stood ready to receive an important guest. The thunder of hooves sounded as Dale rode into Greenbelt Castle. Baron Greenbelt. And Greenbelt soldiers were waiting to greet him. Dale dismounted. Baron Greenbelt, with a respectful expression, welcomed him. It is an honor to meet young Master Dale of Saxon. You must be tired after a long journey. Meanwhile, Greenbelt soldiers whispered among themselves. One murmured, my God, he really is a child. I wonder if he even knows how to use a sword. Another replied, anyway, they say he's a prodigy. Don't worry too much. Baron Greenbelt smiled broadly, relieved by Dale's presence. Having the young master here is truly reassuring. Dale replied, thank you, Baron Greenbelt. However, Baron Greenbelt remained skeptical. He couldn't believe they'd actually sent a mere 10-year-old boy. Even with the black cavalry accompanying him, he's still too young to command fully. Baron Greenbelt planned to invite Dale to the banquet, prepared in the castle. But Dale cut him off briskly, his tone firm. No, we don't have time to waste. Baron Greenbelt was stunned and embarrassed by Dale's blunt refusal. Excuse me, what do you mean? Dale suddenly drew his sword, startling Baron Greenbelt in shock. With his blade still drawn, Dale stared straight at Baron Greenbelt, with a sharp look and a crooked smile, declaring, first I want to inspect the condition of your troops. Among those under your command, who is the strongest? Dale pointed his sword at the trembling man. Under the prodigies. Gaze. In a steady voice, Dale asked, I have only one more question. Among the knights under your command, who is the strongest? Before Baron Greenbelt could answer, a red-haired knight stepped forward with excessive confidence. It's me, young master, he confidently declared. Young master, those who can defeat me haven't been born yet, pointing to himself with a smug smile. But beneath that expression, he sneered inwardly. What a brat, carrying a sword around, just because your family gave you a title. Ridiculous. I'll give you a proper lesson. Dale's gaze sharpened at the knight's arrogance. Immediately Dale drew his sword from the Baron and spoke nonchalantly. It seems you all doubt my ability. A short laugh escaped Dale as he looked directly at the red-haired knight. You doubt me because I'm a 10-year-old child, put in charge of an important battle. Without consultation, Dale stabbed his sword into the ground beside him and continued speaking. I also doubt the abilities of the troops you command. The only way to settle this doubt is with swords. A sly smile flickered on Dale's lips. But then, the strongest knight the Duke bragged about is just a drunk. Dale wore a mocking, provocative smile and stared at the red-haired knight. At this point, even if I didn't doubt you, haven't you proven it yourself? The knight ground his teeth in anger, but Dale continued without hesitation. Are you planning to borrow courage from alcohol? The insult hit deep. The red-haired knight clenched his sword and roared. I understand, young master. He pointed his sword at Dale, officially issuing a challenge. He frowned, and I am Herrick. I offer the honor of a knight, to prove the prowess of the Baron's house. Dale replied with a crafty smile. Quickly the duel began. The two opponents faced each other, ready for a one-on-one fight. The knights in the area gathered around, eager to see how the confrontation would unfold. Dale glanced at the red-haired knight and said calmly, You've heard of my swordsmanship, haven't you? The red-haired knight sneered. Of course I'm well aware of the young master's strange swordsmanship. Meanwhile, behind his confident face, another thought arose. Where does this child get such confidence? Is he really hiding something up his sleeve? He lowered his stance and tightened his grip. I'm coming. With a leap forward, he closed the distance. He charged at great speed, driven by rage and dark energy. His blade descended toward Dale, exploding with power, as he unleashed the hidden strength within. The red-haired knight's eyes widened, as his strike was stopped, not by steel, but by dark energy swirling around Dale's sword. Dale stood firm with a calm, unmasked confidence. The knight shouted in disbelief and swung again. But every blow was neatly countered and blocked by Dale. A faint smile appeared on Dale's lips. Meanwhile, the red-haired knight grew increasingly frustrated. Why wasn't his sword even infused with aura? He knew the truth. Only a few high-ranking knights could wield an aura blade. If he was fighting seriously, I should respond in kind. Dale raised his hand, summoning the summoner, mage power that surged within him. A black magic circle formed, glowing faintly inside the swirling mist, as he prepared to unleash it. As Dale finished the incantation, the darkness thickened, shifted, and moved, forming something strange within. The red-haired knight froze, completely shocked. What the hell is this? Before anyone could say another word, the purple-black energy exploded. Those energy particles quickly coalesced and fired at the red-haired knight. Like an unrelenting barrage, the knight desperately tried to block each strike. His attack wouldn't stop. He shouted, barely holding his stance. Inside, fury surged. Because of that damn relic, I got distracted. His thoughts raged at Dale as he struggled. Meanwhile, Dale calmly formed a layer of mana into a defensive shield, ready to block any counterattack to come. Dale thought to himself that his strength was pretty ordinary anyway. Suddenly his eyes widened in astonishment. The red-haired knight had fallen. He writhed on the ground, crying out in pain, while the Baron beside him cried out in panic. Lord Hebrick, the fallen man, moaned, trying to rise. Lord Hebrick, are you all right? He managed between gasps. Dale stood frozen for a moment, clutching his sword. Surprise was playing on his face. Really, he muttered, unable to hide his astonishment. Did he fall that easily? Suddenly, Baron Greenbelt rushed forward and shouted, in disbelief, young Master Dale, what is happening? You defeated one of our elite knights right before an important battle. Dale ground his teeth as irritation flared within him. But Dale forced himself to stay calm and spoke to the Baron calmly. Duke Greenbelt, do you not understand the situation? Dale's expression hardened as he said, with that strength, only our Saxon family will struggle in this battle. Are you the Duke? Just going to stand by comfortably and watch? Duke Greenbelt looked at Dale in disbelief. He stammered that. Back to the red-haired knight. Still trembling, he slowly lifted his head with a pained expression. Dale asked, is this really the strongest knight you pride yourself on? Dale raised his sword and declared firmly, our Saxon family will not hesitate to serve as a shield for our allied houses. But that does not mean you are permitted to neglect your duties. Dale continued until the battle began. Our Duke's knights will be your sword. Now choose. Now choose. Will you follow me or lose the land beneath your feet? All the knights stared at him, stunned by his words. A heavy silence fell over the arena. After a moment, the knights knelt one by one, and then all bowed their heads before Dale. Their voices rang out together, full of conviction. We pledge our loyalty, young master. Cut to the Saxon family. Cut to the Saxon household. Inside the room, Dale's mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. After hearing the report, Duke Saxon looked at his wife and softly said, there is nothing to worry about. He placed his hand over hers and added, calmly and surely, that child possesses far more than we can imagine. Duke Saxon comforted his wife and spoke with quiet pride. As Dale grows, the sights that child will witness will far exceed anything we can understand. A weak smile appeared on his lips. One day our child will rule this world. But far away, Dale scratched his head, disappointment overflowing his thoughts. There's no hope left. I'm truly a frog at the bottom of a well. Only now do I realize how pathetic the outside world is. What a bunch of useless people. He remembered the man he despised and muttered. The Sword Saint must have known this territory situation in advance, which is why he appointed Baron Greenbelt. If that's the case, I have my own plan. The next day arrived with brutal training. The red-haired knight was dragging a massive boulder. He dropped to one knee, panting. Please, sir, don't make us do this anymore. Around him, exhausted knights collapsed to the ground. I can't take any more, another shouted. We're already wiped out. Dale watched from his seat. His shout still echoed. Stand up, you weaklings, and you dare call yourselves Northern Knights. The red-haired knight grimaced. But I'm injured. You have no cause for complaint. Dale replied without a shred of sympathy. Then he ordered, teach Baron Greenbelt's knights every detail, starting with endurance training. They are wholly unfit. Sir Barrett nodded firmly. Yes, young master. A forced smile crossed Dale's face. Also send someone to Baron Parker's lands. Tell them I wish to propose a negotiation. The knight who received the order stared in disbelief. Negotiation. Dale leaned back, his tone sharp and decisive. Not because I intend to accept humiliating peace terms. There's someone I want to meet before the battle begins. The setting shifted to a makeshift negotiation site, erected on the border between two baronial domains. A tense atmosphere signaled that a battle was about to erupt. Inside, Lord Dale of House Saxon, a young boy, was already seated at the negotiation table. Standing behind him was the loyal knight, Sir Bale, quietly observing. Though young Dale had quickly sized up the situation, he thought to himself that his side had at most a few weeks to prepare. Meanwhile, the Knights of St. Magdalena were undertaking a long march across the continent with supply difficulties. They were likely to launch a preemptive strike soon to solve their logistical problems. Moreover, Baron Parker's knightly forces could not be underestimated, promising a hard-fought battle. At that moment, the opposing party entered. A voice announced, "Lord Philip has arrived." Dale merely smirked. He had anticipated that. As expected, they would send these two. The man introduced as Commander Philip was, in Dale's eyes, nothing but an empty figurehead, a puppet put on display. And the one standing behind him, Sir Milvis, was the true commander of this battle. Philip sat down across from him. Dale greeted him with mock politeness and then burst into laughter. He continued in a contemptuous tone. "After all this time, you want to negotiate. Kid, it seems you're so scared. You'll wet your pants before a real fight." Philip taunted, but Dale remained silent, expressionless. Ignoring the provocation entirely, Dale cut to the chase. "Why did you agree to my request to negotiate?" Philip only sneered, assuming the question was directed at him. "I'm not asking you." Dale's reply froze the smile on Philip's face. He was stunned, not understanding what was happening. But Dale clarified, his sharp gaze fixed on the man standing behind Philip. "I'm not talking to a puppet set up as a figurehead. I'm speaking to the real commander behind you. Sir, the Pureblade." The name stunned Philip into silence, and though Milvas kept a stern face, he could not hide his surprise. "Isn't that so?" Dale continued with a knowing smile. "Why would a famed holy swordsman hand over full battlefield command to someone without even a shred of talent?" Dale's words struck like a blade at Philip's pride, making him grind his teeth in fury. Seeing the situation worsen, Milvis hurriedly placed a hand on Philip's shoulder, trying to reassure him. "Lord Philip, do not let that boy's words unsettle you." But turmoil roiled within Milvis. That Count Brandenburg, Philip's father, considered his son a disgrace, was a secret known only to a few in their faction. How could this boy possibly know? While Milvis was still bewildered, Dale pressed into Philip's wound. "How does it feel to know that? Even your respected father has no trust in you." Unable to bear the humiliation, Philip slammed the table and rose. "This negotiation is over." Milvis also stood, saying they had no reason to stay. Milvis growled, "We will return at once." Philip clenched his hand until it shook with rage, and could only agree. Just as they thought to leave, Dale blocked them with a sharp question, aimed at Milvis. "Do you even need permission to speak?" Dale continued his. "You're bowing to take orders from someone beneath you." Milvis was stunned. Such a stance is no different from that of a slave. Dale sneered, "Is that the bearing befitting the firstborn of a countly house?" His biting words lashed at both their pride. Dale's remarks struck hard at Philip's vanity, making him grind his teeth. "It's nothing more than a dog on a leash for its master." Milvis tried to reason with Philip, not to heed the taunts. But Philip had completely lost control. He shouted in Milvis' face, "Shut up." Across from them, Dale quietly watched the scene, while Philip raged. Dale kept a calm smile, savoring the chaos he had caused. Dale leaned back, pouring salt on the wound. "At this rate, I truly can't tell whether you're the puppet of the holy swordsman or the puppet of Sir Milvis." Those words completely shattered Philip's psychological defenses, sending him into a frenzy. At that point, Dale revealed his true intention. "My entire tactic was to break the enemy's command structure. I never intended to negotiate from the start. After declaring that, Dale turned to order his knight. Sir Bale, step outside for a moment. Sir Bale immediately obeyed. As Sir Bale left, Dale maintained a calm, confident expression, ready for the final act of the performance. Now, with only 3 people remaining, Dale extended an invitation. Can we speak privately now? He emphasized, just between the 2 highest ranking commanders, the ones truly responsible for this battlefield. The remark both flattered and completely isolated Philip, despite Milvis' desperate attempts to restrain him. Philip, his pride wounded, shouted fine. To assert his authority, Philip turned to order. Leave at once, Sir Milvis. Do you not hear me, the highest commander, speaking? Philip bellowed, while Milvis could only stammer. Be but Lord Philip. Philip insisted that dealing with the Saxon boy was his responsibility. Milvis realized things had gone terribly wrong. Philip had fallen completely into Dale's trap. Powerless Milvis could only obey bitterly, leaving Philip alone to face the crafty fox disguised as a lamb. Thank you, Lord Philip, Dale said in a politely false tone. As I said earlier, my request for this meeting was entirely for negotiation. Philip arrogantly retorted, Are you saying you have something that could persuade me? Dale replied calmly, yes. Dale began to present his offer. If the Knights of St. Magdalena withdraw from this battle immediately, House Saxon will provide all necessary supplies for your army's return journey. Philip was stunned by the proposal. You dare call that a negotiation? Philip slammed the table and roared. Dale simply answered calmly, yes. And I apologize if my earlier word offended you. Dale said with dripping sarcasm. However, please withdraw your forces. Dale issued his ultimatum. If not, your army will be annihilated, and hundreds of knights will be taken prisoner. Furthermore, the reputation of the holy swordsman and your own name will be dragged through the mud. This is your last chance to keep even a shred of dignity. Hearing this, Philip laughed maniacally, sweat pouring down like a shower. At last, Philip realized he had been led by the nose from beginning to end. He screamed in despair, Sir Milvis was right. You intended to mock us from the start. Facing Philip's fury, Dale only smiled enigmatically and folded his hands. What a pity, he said, his tone eerily calm, as if savoring the opponent's collapse. Philip's sweat, soaking his brow, tried to salvage a last shred of dignity. What did you say? You're not afraid. But Dale replied coldly. This is your last chance. Dale delivered the final psychological blow, a cruel prophecy. When this battle fails, the one to bear all the blame will not be Sir Milvis, the commander, but the inept, utterly useless eldest son of a count. The image of his disappointed father appeared behind Philip, striking straight at his greatest fear. Philip burst into a mad laugh, trying to deny the harsh truth. Don't be ridiculous. He sprang to his feet, pointing at Dale and growling. You won't be sneering for much longer. Soon I'll prove myself in front of everyone. Philip shouted. Dale only smiled softly and replied, Please keep that confidence as long as you can. The negotiation had completely collapsed. Shortly after, in the Greenbelt domain, Philip and Milva's faction returned. Standing on the battlements, Milvas asked the guards about enemy movements. A soldier reported that House Saxons Knights had begun mobilizing their forces. Milvas recalled the negotiation. He could not forget the child's eyes in terrifying calm. He realized Dale did not look like a novice. Though only 10 years old, he was not an opponent to be underestimated. Then Milvis clenched his fist. He understood this was his chance, a chance to eliminate the threat. While it was still in its egg, while he's still only a 10-year-old, Milvis thought, we must strike him down and end his growth. Meanwhile, Philip, in his rage, was rallying his army. We'll teach that loudmouth brat to be silent. At the same time, in Dale's camp, a soldier ran up to Lord Dale. The enemy's main force has begun to move. Dale, now armored atop his horse, calmly replied, Well done. Dale drew his sword, ready to lead his army into a fight to the death. He raised his blade high and cried the rallying call. Swords of House Saxon, your moment has come. Today show them the blood worthy of that name. The army answered a thunderous shout filling the air, ready for battle.